Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'm Bill Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor. Thank you to everybody that came out on what is really a nasty, wet, cold, raw evening. Whether you're here in person or whether you're watching us on Zoom, we appreciate your presence. We appreciate your participation in local government. We'll be starting the open forum portion of our meeting in just a few minutes. The open forum is that portion of the meeting where members of the public have the opportunity to share their comments with the town board. I'll be talking about that a little more when we get there, but if you're watching us on YouTube or on our cable access channel, you'll have to log in and watch the meeting on Zoom in order to speak during the open forum. If you're not familiar on how to enter on Zoom, you can do so using the instructions that are on the Town of Brighton webpage, townofbrighton.org. We continue to make our meetings accessible to members of the deaf and hard of hearing community with our ASL interpreters. Tonight, Allie's not with us, but Kalina is, and Heather is with us, our regular. It's good to have Heather here. It's good to have you both here. As a reminder, the agenda for tonight's meeting, if you're here in the room, is on the back table, along with copies of all the materials that the town board will be reviewing and making their decisions tonight. If you are participating remotely, all of that same material is available on the Town of Brighton webpage. We'll start, as we always do, with a pledge. If you're able, I would ask you to rise, and I'm going to ask Town Attorney Ken Gordon to lead us in the pledge tonight.
Thank you for the privilege, Supervisor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ken. We do have two proclamations issued by the town board this evening. The first is to recognize that this Saturday, November 25th, is Small Business Saturday. We all know about all the publicity, all the push for Black Friday. We've seen the ads and everything else, but all too often, Black Friday is an event that celebrates malls, it celebrates big box retailers that have resources to pump those ads out. But we can't forget, we shouldn't forget the small businesses that line our commercial corridors in Brighton like other communities. Those small businesses are the cornerstone of so much of what gets done here in Brighton. Shops, salons, restaurants, and so many more family businesses, other businesses can be found right here in Brighton. Small Business Saturday is also important because when you shop local and shop small, and of course those are the two hashtags for, I don't know, what we used to call Twitter, ex-aficionados. Those are the hashtags. But when you do that, you're shopping sustainable. You're shopping sustainable, and I can't stress that enough. Some of us are fortunate enough to live close enough to a lot of small businesses here in Brighton that we can just walk or ride our bikes to shop. But even if you have to drive to get to Monroe Avenue, it's a shorter drive, and you don't have to deal with the parking lot frenzy at some of the big box stores. So sleep in on Friday, enjoy the day, recover from the turkey, and on Saturday, celebrate Small Business Saturday here in the town of Brighton. Let me read this proclamation. I don't believe we have anybody here from the chamber tonight, but I will be presenting this on Saturday, on Small Business Saturday. Whereas nationally, small businesses employ nearly half of all private sector employees. Whereas Small Business Saturday positively impacts local communities and encourages people to shop small all year long. And whereas the town of Brighton supports our local businesses and is grateful for the jobs they create, the boost they give our economy, and the entrepreneurial spirit that they represent. And whereas today we recognize as well the Brighton Chamber of Commerce, an organization made up primarily of small businesses and small business owners in and around the town of Brighton, working to promote the economic well-being of our community, businesses, and institutions. And whereas the Brighton Chamber of Commerce, its members and leaders, play an integral role in the business and professional life of Brighton, and they are critical supporters of small business development and growth. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and the members of our Town Council do hereby proclaim November 25th, 2023 as Small Business Saturday in the town of Brighton, and urge the residents of our community to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and every day throughout the year. And this proclamation is signed the 21st day of November, 2023, by myself and by the members of the town board. Our next proclamation recognizes Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is observed on November 20th of each year, in memory of transgender individuals who have lost their lives simply because they were being true to their own authentic identity. As we see more and more hatred directed at the LGBTQ+ community, and particularly towards transgender people, it seems almost certain that the list of transgender people killed due simply to their identity will continue to rise. Brighton has been a leader in respecting the rights of the entire LGBTQ+ community, but let us all resolve to do more. Let us all resolve to stand up to hate. Take action wherever, whenever, in whatever form it takes. Take action against hate directed at our transgender neighbors. I'll read our proclamation. Whereas Transgender Day of Remembrance began in the United States in 1998 as a vigil for Rita Hester, a transgender woman who was murdered. And whereas propelled by the disproportionate violence faced by transgender and gender nonconforming individuals here and around the world, the day has since grown into an international event. And whereas this year, for the first time in its over 40-year history, the Human Rights Campaign declared a national state of emergency for LGBTQ+ Americans in response to the over 550 anti-LGBTQ+ bills introduced into state houses across the country, more than 80 of which were passed into law. And whereas the majority of the bills, 220 of them, were introduced this year in 2023 alone, underscoring the immense scale of the proliferation of misinformation about and hateful rhetoric against transgender people in the United States. Whereas we must actively reject this disturbing wave of discriminatory laws and policies that see children being denied gender-affirming care and books banned from libraries, and instead work towards a future where transgender and gender non-conforming individuals no longer need to fight simply to exist. And whereas tonight we honor the lives of the 33 courageous, self-determined Americans who embrace their identity, forge their own lives, despite harassment, oppression, and ultimately violence directed against them. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and the members of our Town Council do hereby recognize November 20th, 2023 is Transgender Day of Remembrance, and urge all Brightonians to reject bigotry in all of its forms. This proclamation is signed 21st day of November 2023 by myself and by all of the members of the Brighton Town Board. Thank you all for signing. Before we start the open forum, just a couple quick announcements I want to make. First, just a reminder that this Sunday, we will be holding a ribbon cutting and open house for the new Brighton Winter Market building on Westfall Road over in Buckland Park. The ribbon cutting is at 10, fingers crossed for better weather than today, and the open house will run from 10 until noon. And of course, everyone is welcome. I want to thank Senator Jeremy Cooney and Assembly Member Sarah Clark for their support of that project, and also to Congressmember Joe Morelli, who also supported the project when he was a member of the State Assembly. Last Sunday was the final outdoor market day of the year. There will not be an actual market this Sunday. We're just going to have that open house. But a week from Sunday, December 3rd, and every Sunday throughout the Winter Farmers Market will be in its new home on Westfall Road from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. each Sunday. Also want to note that we will be holding our annual East Brighton and West Brighton Community Forum events the week after Thanksgiving. The East Brighton Community Forum will be on Monday, November 27th, at 7 p.m. at the Legacy on Clover Blossom. That's at 100 Macaulay Drive, right off Clover Street. The West Brighton Forum will be held on Wednesday, November 29th, also at 7 p.m. at the Rustic Village Community Recreation Room. The town board and many members of senior town staff will be there to answer questions you may have, address community concerns you might have. But in addition, at both of those meetings, we're going to have a representative from RG&E. The representative will be making a presentation about smart meters and also will be available to answer questions or concerns that people have about RG&E service. And we all know that that has been a recurring concern. I'll just say that Bridget Monroe in my office has worked with literally hundreds of Brighton residents resolving Brighton billing and other service issues with RG&E. But we certainly welcome people to come out. They'll have an opportunity to speak one-on-one with someone from RG&E. And then finally, at a luncheon held this past Friday, this was a surprise. This was a lot of fun. Surprise to her. We were all in on the surprise. Our town historian, Mary Jo Lanphier, received the ABCD Award, which stands for Above and Beyond the Call of Duty Award, from the Genesee Valley Parks and Recreation Society. Mary Jo truly does go above and beyond the call of duty in her work as town historian. Her love of history, and specifically her love of Brighton's history, and just her never-ending quest to unearth more interesting information about our town. You see it in everything she does. So I was so pleased to be there to see her get this award, to see the look of surprise on her face when her name came up on the screen. But congratulations, Mary Jo, and thank you so much for this, the work you do, and congratulations for well-earned recognition. Okay, we will now begin our open forum. The open forum, is we hold it at the beginning of every town board meeting. The open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board about any matter relating to the town, whether or not it is on our agenda tonight. I would note that we have 3 public hearings tonight. One of those public hearings relates to the potential removal and replacement of a tree in the town right-of-way adjacent to 129 Clovercrest Drive. One relates to the proposed Town of Brighton Climate Action Plan, and one relates to the proposed, to the incentive zoning and rezoning application for the proposed Topgolf to be located near East Henrietta Road. If you're here to speak at one of those public hearings and you want your comments included on the record of the public hearing, I would encourage you to wait until we call the relevant public hearing. But if you do want to speak during the open forum, as I mentioned earlier, join the meeting on Zoom first, following the directions on the town's webpage if you need to. You'll be admitted, if you want to speak, by the host if you'll use the Zoom raised hand function. And by the way, same thing goes when we get to those public hearings. You'll have a chance to use the raised hand function and speak during the public hearings if you're watching us on Zoom. I would ask all speakers during the open forum, whether you're here in person or remotely, to please state your name and address. Please limit your remarks during the open forum to 3 minutes. I'll give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. We may not be able to answer any questions that you have tonight, particularly if your question relates to a matter that's not on the agenda. But our goal tonight, and really at every town board meeting during the open forum, is to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts with the town, for us to be able to listen to your words and, if possible, answer your questions. So please, during the open forum, direct your remarks to the town board and not to the room or to any other speakers. Please refrain from personal attacks and from outbursts of any kind during the open forum, out of respect for other speakers and for the time of everyone here tonight. So I'll ask, is there anyone here in the room that would like to address the town board during the open forum? Is there anyone on our Zoom meeting that would like to address the board during the open forum? Again, I would note for everybody, you were probably listening, if you're here to talk at the public hearings, we'll be calling those in just a minute. I see no one either here in the room or on Zoom looking to speak during the open forum. Chris, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Bill, I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. As I mentioned, we have 3 public hearings tonight. The first public hearing is to consider the possible removal and replacement of a 30-inch sugar maple tree at 129 Clovercrest Drive, actually in the right-of-way adjacent to 129 Clovercrest Drive. That public hearing is called pursuant to the town's tree law. Dan, has the necessary legal notice for this public hearing been given?
Yes, Supervisor. This notice was published in the November 6th edition of the Daily Record.
Thank you, Dan. And Everett, have the appropriate neighbors received mail notice?
Yes, Supervisor, they have.
Wonderful. Then, notice having been given, I declare this public hearing on the removal of a sugar maple tree adjacent to 129 Clovercrest Drive to be open. Everett, do you or Ken have any material for the record before we open it up to the public?
So it's a tree that was evaluated by our town arborist. It was found to be severely declining with a hazard rating of 12. It's got heart rot disease and some nesting holes, and so we deemed it a hazard enough to be removed. We heard from the owner of 129 Clovercrest, who is amenable to the removal of said tree and is supportive at this time.
Thanks, Everett. In both your correspondence, the tree hazard evaluation form, and I know we got that communication, should be included in the public record of this hearing. Ken, anything else from, then is there anyone here in the audience that would like to speak concerning this public hearing? Is there anyone on the Zoom that would like to speak during this public hearing on the removal of a tree adjacent to 129 Clovercrest Drive? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing to be closed. You have a proposed resolution in your packet. Christine?
Yes, in the matter regarding the removal and replacement of a 30-inch sugar maple at 129 Clovercrest Drive, I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the town attorney.
Second.
And just a note, all of these resolutions on tonight's agenda were prepared by John Mancuso, attorney to the town.
Thank you.
Then I revise, I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
And we do have that second. Any further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye, and since you mentioned, John, our new attorney to the town, John Mancuso, is here, but I'll have you introduce your colleague from the Weaver Mancuso Law Firm.
Thank you, Supervisor. I am joined by my colleague, Lauren Barron. She will be assisting with representing the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Planning Board, and the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you, and again, we've worked, of course, with you. We've worked with Lauren as it relates to litigation matters, and I would note that your law firm, I understand, is a WBE, which is a great thing, and we're happy to have you. We know your track record. We're happy to have you stepping in.
Thank you, Supervisor. We look forward to representing the town.
Thank you. Our next public hearing relates to the proposed Town of Brighton Climate Action Plan. Everett has, or Dan rather, has the necessary legal notice been given in this matter?
Yes, Supervisor, this notice was in the October 30th edition of the Daily Record.
Great. We're going to have a presentation by our consultants from the Barton and LaJudas firm this evening, and then we'll be taking public comment after that presentation. Once we have heard from the public and once we've heard the presentation, we're going to close the public hearing, but I don't anticipate that we will take action to formally approve the plan until our next town board meeting. As I mentioned earlier, if you're watching us remotely, you'll need to log into Zoom in order to participate. Dan, the legal notice has been given. Then I declare this public hearing to be open on the Climate Action Plan, and I'll invite Jamie, I think, is going to quarterback the presentation from Barton and LaJudas. Jamie, and we may need to move back out to watch at least a part of the presentation. I don't know how much is going to be video and how much is going to be in person.
Thank you, Supervisor. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jamie Burchard. I am the Senior Managing Community Planner at Barton LaJudas, and I'm very excited to be here this evening to provide an overview of all of the great work that has been accomplished over the just about 2 years in the update to the Climate Action Plan for the town of Brighton. I know we're waiting for the presentation to appear. In a few moments, I will go ahead and introduce all of our team members. We've had a lot of contribution from various municipal staff, as well as volunteers from the community, and our team at Barton LaJudas, as well as our teaming partner, Anchor QEA. So the agenda for this evening's presentation, again, we will provide an introduction to all of the great team members and their contribution to this process. We'll discuss the project purpose as well as the planning process itself. So for individuals who are not as familiar with what is a climate action plan and its relevance and importance to the community, we will review that, as well as the contribution of the greenhouse gas inventory, which leads into the overall climate action plan, which you can think of as a roadmap for looking to achieve the goals that were put forth through a very dynamic planning process. And then we'll culminate with next steps and an overview of where we go from this evening's presentation and what the town can look forward to achieving as we move forward in the implementation of the plan. So with that, I will continue forward in introducing again all of the contributions of the members that contributed to the overall climate action plan for the town. I do want to start off by acknowledging the hard work of all of the staff and officials that contributed to the planning process. Everett Garcia, Brendan Ryan, as well as our town board liaison, Robin Will. And in a few moments, I will also acknowledge my other team member here from Barton LaJudas, Grace DeSantis, and Lena DeSantis from Anchor QEA. I wanted to provide an opportunity for the chair of the Sustainability Oversight Committee, Erin Ryan, to also provide some opening words and comments to address the public here this evening. Again, my name is Jamie Burchard, and we are representing the firm Barton LaJudas, which is located here in Rochester, New York, and Grace DeSantis is our project community planner. I will again be addressing the introduction of the overall climate action plan, and Grace will be talking more about the climate action plan itself. Lena DeSantis, who is joining us remotely this evening from Anchor QEA, will talk specifically about the components of the greenhouse gas inventory. And with that, I would like to hand it over to, before I do that, got ahead of myself. I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about what is a climate action plan. So again, for folks who are joining remotely and are here in person, a climate action plan can be thought of as an action strategy to review a collection of metrics from behalf of the town operations as well as the community at large. So this is a dual climate action plan that looked at both government operations and emissions from the community itself. So it was a unique process in that it was a combined process itself. And so looking at the data that was collected on emissions inventory, we were able to put forward target and metrics so that we can look at overall reduction in operating costs, emissions reduction, as well as energy reduction. Because as we can see in our environment, the impact that climate hazards are having across the community, whether it's hitting our natural resources, social vulnerability across our community members, as well as our built environment and transportation. So we can think of this as an overall roadmap for achieving these overall goals and targets. What makes this particular process very special here in the town of Brighton is that from the very beginning, we were targeted to create a very dynamic process for collecting community input. That was very, very important to the town when we began this planning process, was to find ways to gather very robust community input and put together a variety of tools in person as well as virtual so that we could collect information and input from the public. And again, my colleague Grace DeSantis will discuss for you this evening all of the different tools that were utilized to gather input from community members. And with that, now I will hand it over to Erin Ryan.
Thank you, Jamie. The town of Brighton has been very active in climate change activities and sustainability-related matters. In 2010, the Sustainability Oversight Committee was formed, and the plan tonight is the fruition of a lot of work of many volunteers and staff members here. So thank you very much to the town board members, our staff, and the volunteers that have been on this committee. So the SOC is a volunteer-based committee of community members, and we are purely advisory. And some key activities the town has been involved in, and the Sustainability Oversight Committee has been also actively involved in, is the New York State Climate Smart Communities Program. as well as the NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities Program. Town of Brighton is not only a participant, but a leader in both of those programs. And because of that, we are eligible for grants and currently pursuing future grants for energy-saving projects. The SOC produced a baseline greenhouse gas inventory in 2014 and a draft climate action plan. So today you're going to be seeing an updated greenhouse gas inventory and a finalized climate action plan, which is very exciting. And the town of Brighton also, not long ago, integrated climate-related actions into the town's comprehensive plan, the Envision Brighton 2028. And just a few key examples of climate actions the town has taken is that the town actually has converted most of town-owned building lighting systems as well as town-owned streetlights to LEDs. That's really exciting, and town also is actively working with county and state governments to implement road diets and to enhance our bicycle infrastructure so people can bike to work and bike to shopping. But there's many, many other actions, so.
Thank you, Erin. We had a lot of great material to work with at the beginning of this process. So again, really leveraging all of the great work that has been put forward in the community made this planning process itself a really wonderful project to work on. As mentioned this evening, we spoke a lot about the Climate Smart Communities program. So again, for individuals who may not be familiar with that program, it began in 2009 as an interagency program to reward communities for actions to put forward, again, reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, energy reduction, and looking at overall ways to, again, reduce their risk to climate hazards that we're observing in the environment. So I'm really happy to say that the town of Brighton became bronze certified in 2019. And that's a very big accomplishment, essentially. Just about 200 points or 130 points, I think, are necessary for the bronze certification. I know that the community is looking to move forward in the silver certification, which is 200 points. And so every little bit counts, and a lot of the work that we are going to talk about here this evening with the greenhouse gas inventory for both the community and for the government operations, as well as the climate action plan itself, earns points for the community, and that is really exciting. So we can talk about that in the conclusion. The other program that we can talk about a little bit more is the Clean Energy Communities program. Again, both these programs are incentive-based, they're voluntary, and there are ways to create opportunities for the community to put forward and find projects and programs to achieve reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, which is the cause of climate change that we're observing in our environment, and looking at ways to to adapt to changes that we are observing locally here, whether it be flooding or heat or drought. So again, having this planning process provides an opportunity to leverage a lot of the good projects that have been conducted to date through the town, and it also provides an opportunity to work with the community and build awareness in terms of ways that we can all move forward together and achieve, again, a more resilient and sustainable future for the town. As Erin mentioned, again, we had information that we could work from in terms of the baseline for the greenhouse gas inventory. A lot of work had been put forward by the staff here at the town to put that baseline assessment together. And again, my colleague, Lena DeSantis from Anchor QEA will talk about the update to that baseline inventory that occurred based on the 2020. And then the metrics and the targets that are put forward from the inventory are culminated into the climate action plan. So again, very similar to any type of planning process, you study, you collect the data, you put forward goals and targets, and then you put that out and you work with the public to figure out how to prioritize those action items. And so essentially that is what a climate action plan is, and at the end of this process you will have an actionable strategy to go forward and continue to find funding mechanisms for project implementation, which is really important. And again, having that bronze certification will be very important, and achieving the silver status as well is a great goal for the community. And the Climate Smart Communities grant program, which will will be upcoming in the CFA in the spring, will be a great opportunity for the town to leverage this plan and start getting to work on your actions and strategies. And as I've mentioned, again, it was really important that we were able to gather as much community input as possible, and we will talk more about the different tools that we utilized to gather all that great input from the public. As I mentioned here, you can see a lot of different points. This timeline is featured in the Climate Action Plan itself. We had many meetings with our steering committee, which is the Sustainability Oversight Committee, which you see there in blue. The green targets, you can see all of the opportunities that we created for public input, whether it was at public information meetings. We attended a spring public event as well as a fall public event. We had public workshops. So lots of opportunity for the community to give and provide feedback. And in the gray circles there, you can see all of the project deliverables itself, which consisted of the greenhouse gas inventory as well as the climate action plan itself. And so with that, I would like to introduce Lena DeSantis, who will talk more about the actual nuts and bolts of what went into the greenhouse gas inventory.
Thank you, Jamie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks so much. And thanks for letting me join you remotely tonight. I appreciate it. We're having the same storm here on Long Island, so it's nice not to travel, but I appreciate the ability to still participate. As Jamie said, we worked on the greenhouse gas inventory for the town. So I'll go over just quickly, just for folks maybe where an inventory is not maybe it's not second knowledge, just kind of what it is. A greenhouse gas inventory, it identifies, quantifies, and categorizes greenhouse gas emissions within a set geographic scope. So usually within a town or a county or a state, you'll see on the side that the state of New York does regular greenhouse gas inventories, and which, as you get smaller and smaller, the emissions tend to get better and better, or the quantification of those emissions, because you have more direct sources that you're taking accounting for. The main reason why we do these is to identify reduction strategies. We want to see where we are with emissions. We want to look and see what type of emissions we have, and then be able to target reduction strategies towards them. Low-hanging fruit is always the easiest thing to start with, but also a really big goal of emission inventories is to do cost-benefit ratios, where we see where maybe there are a lot of emissions, and that's where you can target emission strategies towards. Emission inventories are usually done regularly. We start with a baseline. The town has done a baseline inventory, and then there's a regular progression. You don't usually want to do them on kind of an annual basis. That's a little bit actually too frequent, because there's some noise in the emissions inventories just within, like, just as we all know with COVID, operations change a little bit, or patterns change a little bit. So we want to make sure that we're looking at bigger trends. We inventory emissions by scope, so I'll be talking about that a little bit more as we go through. The scopes are basically the buckets the emissions are put in. So your scope 1 emissions are the direct emissions that the entity doing the emissions inventory has direct control over. Scope 2 are generally heating and electricity that are purchased. So your direct heating is in scope 1, but if you're purchasing some heating, it can be in scope 2. But the major source of scope 2 emissions, are electricity emissions. It's the purchasing of that electricity. The emissions are usually somewhere else, but because you're using that electricity, you want to keep track of that. Scope 3 emissions are those emissions that the entity doing the emissions inventory has some level of control over, but not direct control over. So in the town of Brighton, and there's an illustration that gives a little bit more background onto this, that would be your community emissions. So the town has influence over those community emissions, but doesn't directly control it on a day-to-day basis. Greenhouse gas inventories, they generally look at major emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. So we look at things like carbon dioxide and methane and CFCs and HFCs, but we report emissions in CO2 equivalents. So even though and that's the ability to be able to kind of look at things at one level and really track that progress. And what that does is the UN, the IPCC puts together a framework, and EPA also adopts it often, and it basically sets carbon dioxide is at 1, and then whatever the equivalency of the other greenhouse gases. So methane is a much more powerful greenhouse gas, so it has a high what's called a global warming potential, and it allows you to equate that. So if you have 1 metric ton of methane and 1 of carbon dioxide, you really have a lot more CO2 equivalents. So it's a way to equalize emissions. So that's just a quick background on greenhouse gas inventories as we go through in case some of these terms come up. So the town of Brighton has done 2 emissions inventories now. The 2014 baseline inventory was done as part of the New York State Climate Smart Communities program. And in 2020, so that was done in 2016, it's 2014 data. So because inventories are inventorying, emissions usually look backwards. So you have the records from years past. So in 2016, they set the 2014 baseline, and again, that was consistent with the state goals. And then in 2020, we've updated the 2020 emissions, and then also some of the 2014 emissions were applicable. So that's also a very normal part of emissions inventories, where because again it's usually a retrospective look at emissions that have happened, sometimes you have a little bit better data, or emissions factors can change, things like that. So there's often a little bit of a tweaking in the next inventory of the last inventory, and again that's to make sure you're really seeing trends in emissions, how emissions are changing, not because of some accounting issue. It's really a change is directly tied to an emission. So the 2020 emissions inventory, it was consistent with the 2014 emissions inventory, the methodology, as well as the Climate Smart Community accounting tools. So we use the same methodology in both emissions inventories, again, to be able to look at those trends. Again, because things change, there are often some different sources. So in 2020, there were some new sources that were not in the town in 2014. And you see it in this list. It's the electrical vehicle charging station that was built after 2014. So that is a new source in the 2020 emissions inventory. Some direct town sources not accounted for in 2014, again, because the records just weren't as complete, weren't complete at that time. So again, because the town is taking great, they've done a really good job at keeping all their records, and they're really organized. And as they get more information, so we're able to kind of make trends towards those. The 2 emissions, they weren't ready for 2014, so we added them back into the 2014, and then also the 2020 again, so we can see that trend. So we're not, if we just accounted for them in 2020, it would look like there was this increase in emissions. So we put them in the 2014 where they should have been, and into 2020, so we make sure that we're looking at a true trend. It's really an apples to apples comparison. And that was some heating oil and propane used in one of the heating systems, and then also wastewater treatment associated with town employees. So those were 2 sources that weren't accounted for. There was also 1 indirect source that wasn't accounted for in 2014, and again, that was wastewater treatment attributed to community population numbers. So again, we put those in 2014 and in 2020, so we were able to look at the difference. So I'm actually it looks like the slide is advanced further than I am. Could you go back, please?
Wait.
One more, please. Thank you. So that's the correct slide. Thank you. Here are those 3 scopes that I was talking about before, and also the emissions we looked at. So we looked at carbon dioxide, methane, HFCs, nitrogen dioxide, SFS6, PFCs, and we reported those all as carbon dioxide equivalents. The direct town emission sources are the things that the town directly controls, so it directly controls and operates. So that's the town's vehicle fleet, landscaping and maintenance equipment. And the way we looked at those emissions were based on fuel records, so we actually could look at how much fuel was used. So that was a direct emission source. Heating and boilers, and again, that's natural gas and heating oil. Fuel use records, again, that idea that we're looking at those direct emissions. Air conditioning, we looked at the refrigerants that were actually used in 2020. The waste and green waste, and that's tons of materials. Green waste is actually a sequestration, so there was actually a reduction in the amount of greenhouse gases via using green waste, but by looking at the tons of material of both the waste and green waste, we account for both of those sources. And then wastewater. Wastewater was done by employee count, so this was a little bit more of an averaging, but it through the methodology given to us by the Climate Smarts Communities program. So that the total emissions for direct emissions were 746 metric tons a year. Town indirect emissions, again, it was the town uses direct heating, so that we did not have any indirect heating in our scope 2 emissions. We only had electricity, and again, this is the town's use of electricity in buildings and facilities, also outdoor lighting, electrical vehicle and charging facilities. And we calculated those based on the kilowatt hours, so again, usage. And there was 249 metric tons a year of indirect emissions. Then the last category, and this is a very, this pattern is very common, where you'll have the direct emissions, the indirect emissions, and then the scope 3 emissions, those community emissions will be much larger. And that's because the source is much larger. This is the source of these emissions are the community as a whole. So it includes community vehicles. And we did that by looking at regional vehicle miles traveled. We got that from the Genesee Transportation Council. We looked at community energy use. Again, we found electricity and natural gas fuel records. So we were able to look at the community's energy use as a whole. And that's both electricity and natural gas. And there was actually some heating oil in there as well. And then we also looked at the town and community waste streams. So both waste and recycling. And that data was provided by Waste Management, along with the wastewater. And again, that was based on population count. Next slide, please. So you can see, because we have the two inventories, we're also able to see some trends. Some folks who might have some questions about 2020. Obviously, 2020 overlapped with COVID, so some of these trends might be due to usage. So I don't have any slides on it right now, but we did look at metrics to make sure that if we were seeing some trends, we could potentially identify if COVID was the culprit, meaning like were operations just non-existent for a period of time, that reduced use might be resulting in emission reductions, and things like that. For like things like electricity, there probably is some of that for the town, whereas there were a few months where the town maybe wasn't using as much electricity as they normally had. But you can see if you look at the community electricity also dropped. So that's why we look at metrics and we look at comparison and trends, and then look at these different buckets. While we would have expected, if this was only a COVID, that this might either not be as big of a drop, or maybe even an increase, because many of us were home when we weren't normally home during COVID. So electricity use was actually, it could have been up. A lot of this reduction in electricity has to do with a greener grid. New York State's grid is improving. It's improved dramatically since 2014, excuse me. So we're seeing that reduction in emissions. There is also, by looking at metrics and looking at we looked at the building square footage, and we looked at electricity use per square footage of buildings. We were able to see some trends too, and see for things like any essential uses where activities were not decreased because of COVID through the town, that there was actually emission reductions there too per square footage. So that suggests that there's also some energy savings going on as well. As you can see here, the one source that went up were mobile source emissions, and that's from vehicle transportation. And these are in different scales. I apologize, I was trying to put everything on one but it's different scales. This is in the hundreds of thousands, and these are in the thousands. So just, they're not exactly the same, but just to kind of give some basic idea of comparisons. Next slide, please. So just some trends and what we were seeing based on the emissions inventory. Again, electricity emissions have decreased based on statewide grid improvements. Excuse me. We'll see that, and we see this on a statewide basis, and we see this in other inventories done in New York State, that As the electricity emissions decrease, mobile source emissions are becoming a bigger proportion of emissions. Our cars are becoming more efficient, but we're driving them more, and because electricity is becoming cleaner, we're seeing mobile sources become a larger proportion, and we saw that in the town and the community as well. Mobile source emissions are the largest source in both the town and the community, with building and facilities as the second largest source. And you'll see a lot of that are actually coming from the boiler and natural gas emissions. So again, these just show areas where maybe we start targeting emission reductions through the cap. And obviously the community has done that through all the work that Jamie and Grace have been doing with all the members of the committee and the town as a whole. But this just gives us some data and some trends to be able to focus emission reduction strategies on. I think that was the last of my slides. So thank you so much again, and I've appreciated working on this project.
So now we'll get into the climate action plan itself, based on, as Lena just went through, all the data collected in the greenhouse gas inventorying process. So the climate action plan itself was developed, as Jamie mentioned, in coordination with the Sustainability Oversight Committee. They really oversaw and led this process. So we met with them several times throughout the entire planning process to get local input and insight, to get recommendations on how we should engage with the public, and to have their review of draft documents. I also want to note that the idea board was also involved in this process, particularly in the beginning when we were developing our community engagement plan, just so we were making sure that we were rolling out an equitable community engagement strategy. We had a very wide variety of public engagement activities as part of this process, which started off with the development of a community engagement plan. So this evolved over time as we learned more about what methods are most successful with the community and what opportunities were coming up. We were able to amend our plan to be flexible to that. So we started off by developing a project website. This housed all the information related to the project and was accessible to the general public. We also uploaded draft documents on there as they were produced, and we also hosted 2 interactive public tools on the website as well. So one was an ideas wall, basically an online sticky note board, and the other was an interactive map where you can drop a pin with a comment. Both these tools are public facing. They kind of work like social media, so someone leaves a comment, their neighbor can come to the site, see it, they can say, I like this idea, I don't like it, or they can post a reply comment. And these were up for many, many months, really since about the summer of 2022. However, we also understand there's a lot of value in in-person engagement as well. After hosting one virtual workshop at the beginning of this project to introduce the public to the project, we also hosted 2 public events, both of which were at the Brighton Farmers Market. We really wanted to get in front of the community where they're at. So we had an informational booth where people could, at their leisure, come by and talk to us about the project and learn about it and provide their input. We also attended 2 public meetings, one in the West Brighton Community Forum and one at the East Brighton Community Forum. So that was more of a public setting where we were able to give a presentation and then collect feedback from the members of the community that attended those. And then we also had an in-person public workshop over this past summer right here in the town hall lobby. We set up a poster gallery presenting the draft climate action plan to the public. We had some voting exercises and sticky dot exercises to get feedback on that draft plan before producing this more finalized document. And then of course there's a public hearing today, which is another opportunity we want to give to hear from the public on what they think about the actions that we have presented. So the greenhouse gas inventory shows us where we stand, but we also want to have a goal going forward. So this climate action plan aligns with New York State's greenhouse gas emission reduction goals, as stated in the Climate Act, which is to reduce emissions by 85% by 2050. So this applies in the Brighton Climate Action Plan to both the town emissions category and the community emissions category. And we've broken that overall target apart into several goal areas, as you'll see up here. So transportation, buildings, electricity and clean energy, waste, green education and economy, and land use. And these generally do align with those greenhouse gas inventory categories that Lena described, but there are some, like land use strategies, that might result in greenhouse gas emissions across several of those categories. So we wanted to acknowledge that as well. In order to present the different action strategies, we developed matrices. One is for the town actions, and the other is for the community actions. Both of these action matrices have several columns that outline what goal area the action applies to, if the action is going to impact emissions directly or indirectly. So in other words, a direct impact could be an infrastructural change that would immediately reduce greenhouse gas emissions, whereas an indirect action could be something like a zoning code update that might, in the longer term, result in greenhouse gas emission reductions. We also identified which actions were ongoing or were something that wanted to be achieved in the future. We also assigned a relative time frame and a cost to each action as well. All of this in hopes to help the town and the implementers of this plan identify going forward which actions are the most practicable and urgent to implement. This is an example screenshot of just part of the matrices. There were 42 actions in the community action matrix and 29 actions for town operations, so I'm not going to read all of them right now. But this is just a snapshot to show you what that matrix looks like and how you can interpret it. So I think one really unique approach that the town took on this climate action plan in specific is that we don't see across many other communities, is that every action is tied to the Envision Brighton 2028 comprehensive plan, the IDEA plan, the Climate Smart Communities program, and the Clean Energy Communities program. So for every action, you can see if it has been supported in either of those two plans, and if it's also supported and can be used to get points in the Climate Smart Communities and Clean Energy Communities program. And we also identify where we heard public support for these ideas as well, in case you're interested. You know, did this come up at a public workshop or on the idea as well? We've documented that as well. As Lena had ran through with the greenhouse gas inventory, there really are three sectors that are contributing the most to greenhouse gas inventories, or the greenhouse gas emissions, excuse me. Those were the mobile, so vehicles, buildings and facilities, and electricity, and this was the same for both the town and the community. So at that second public workshop, we had an activity where we asked community members to vote for the actions that they felt were the highest priority or the most important to them. We also looked at which actions might result in the largest greenhouse gas emissions reductions, and we were able to identify out of those 42 and 29 actions which are the highest priority and which would impact those largest greenhouse gas emission buckets. So that's what you're seeing here. And they, range across, again, the mobile, building and facilities, and electricity categories. As Jamie had mentioned in the beginning, the Climate Action Plan can be submitted to the Climate Smart Communities program for points. That would be one of the next steps for this plan, is to submit that and help the town reach its goal of becoming silver certified. And that does provide a lot of grant funding benefits that are, through many other grant programs that want to see, okay, if a community has been participating in the Climate Smart Communities program, we might score their application higher in some sort of way. So we are really excited to have been a part of the Climate Action Plan process and to work with your community on this and to help you reach your silver certification and generally continue to progress through the Climate Smart Communities program. And I'll also turn it over to Jamie for some concluding thoughts. I'm sorry, what was your name? Grace DeSantis. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Grace. So in conclusion, as you can see here, there's just about 60 points that the town can now achieve moving forward. So if you add that to the roughly 136 that you have, you're getting closer towards the 200 for silver certification. So that's very, very exciting. And if you do decide to move forward and apply for a grant in this upcoming CFA round, again, being a bronze certified community, you get 4 points already on your application. And you can get 6 if you become a silver certified. So again, this is a points game, and it's very exciting that these particular projects here, the greenhouse gas inventory, as well as the climate action plan itself, these are priority actions. These are the foundational elements of participating in the Climate Smart Communities program. And so the town should be really just very proud of the work that's been accomplished to date. So again, kudos to all of the different municipal staff and the public and the volunteers that have contributed to such a wonderful project, and we're very proud of it. So yes, in conclusion, we're really excited to see the next steps in implementation. I think from here, this is an actionable strategy. I'm sure the SOC will now kind of go back and figure out with their work planning components, which we included as part of the plan itself, to figure out what projects to start implementing. Some of it is the low-hanging fruit that can be accomplished at little to no cost, and then others can be basically look to decide what grant applications would be best suited for the town to move forward in. So, and with that, we're here to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you so much for having us here this evening, and thank you to Aaron and Grace and for Lena for joining remotely, and for everyone here for attending and listening.
While everybody comes back in, I'll just note what a thorough process, not only tonight's presentation, but all the work that's been done in getting to this point. Thank you, Aaron, as a volunteer. I want to make sure we thank our volunteers first, because what you've done and the Sustainability Oversight Committee has done over the years has been extraordinarily valuable. Talk about having community experts working for the town. You're doing it, and I appreciate it. Barton and LaJudas team, and the Anchor QMA, did I get that? QEA teams, thank you for your work. Now we'll open up to the public. Are there members of the public here in the room that would like to address the board concerning the Climate Action Plan? Anybody on the Zoom that would like to address the board? I see none. I know I have some thoughts, and I will share those probably through Everett. Everett and I have talked about some of these changes already, but you know, they're really nibbling at the margins. What you've done, as you can see from this presentation, is very, very thorough, and is going to be quite a detailed roadmap for a lot of years and a lot of hard work in meeting these goals, the CLCPA goals, and so much that we have to do. You know, we just, I think, saw today new releases as to where we are trending. And we're trending not 1.5 degrees, not 2 degrees, but if we continue on the trend we're on, we're going to see a 3-degree increase, which will far exceed numbers that will cause near catastrophic change in our world climate. So this is serious stuff, and I know you treat it seriously, and so do we. Thank you. If there's no one that wishes to participate in the public hearing, I'm going to close the public hearing now.
Bill, if I might, before you do,
sure.
I wanted to acknowledge the hard work of Mike Guyon on this project as well, both the working on the Climate Smart Community and the action plan. The predecessor, Everett stepped in and brought it across the finish line here, but along with the rest of the committee. And I know Aaron's been there the whole time as well. So congratulations on your hard work, and thank you.
And we can close the public hearing, and certainly board members can, you know, with any other comments. But I am going to declare the public hearing closed. Any further comments from the board or from staff?
No, I'll add a few words, and I'll echo everything that's been said. Really, this plan is a culmination of many, many years of hard work. It's one of the charges for the committee set forth by the town board. And so we really do feel very proud of the plan and the work that's been put together by Barton LaJudas, Anchor QEA, and many, many volunteers and student interns who've worked on it throughout the years that perhaps, didn't make it to see it all the way through, but, we were really proud and happy that we're at this point.
Thanks, Everett. Okay, well, thank you, and the process we're getting close to the finish line, and we'll look forward to completing this great project. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
And I do think that presentation deserves a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Okay, our final public hearing this evening relates to the incentive zoning application for the proposed Topgolf Sports Entertainment Facility located adjacent to the Costco store in Citygate near East Henrietta Road. Of course, Costco is in the city of Rochester, but this proposed project, the parcel of land it's proposed to be located on, is in the town of Brighton. Let me say again, we are not going to be taking action on this matter tonight. I anticipate we're going to be holding the public hearing open, but this is an opportunity first for the project team to present the project to the community and for a first opportunity for members to give some input. I'm a little concerned that maybe members in the audience will have, I know it's always a challenge, the angle of the boards and the, for both the TV and the people in the room, but I want to make sure everybody can see them. As I mentioned earlier, if you're watching remotely and want to participate, you'll need to log on Zoom rather than the community access channel or our YouTube channel. Dan, has the necessary legal notice been given in this public hearing?
Yes, Supervisor. So it's published in the November 14th edition of the Daily Record.
Thank you, Dan. And Ken or Everett, has communication been made with residents, whether in the town or in the city, pursuant to our incentive zoning policies?
Yes, Supervisor. I received the affidavit of mailing from the developer.
Good. Then legal notice having been given, I declare this public hearing to be open, and I will turn it over to counsel for the project team, Jerry Goldman. Jerry.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. My name is Jerry Goldman, as you said. I reside at 59 Branchwood Lane in the town of Brighton. It's always nice to be back in my hometown presenting applications. And we're here this evening, as the supervisor pointed out, on a rezoning and incentive zoning for an 18-acre parcel, which is near the intersection of East Henrietta and Westfall Road at the far western end of the town, adjacent to the city of Rochester. My client this evening is Westfall Brighton SRE LLC, who is the contract vendee of the property. It's an affiliate of Streamline Development. Streamline is a known developer in our community and throughout Western New York. The two principals of Westfall Brighton SRE, Matt Lester and Anthony Gizzi, are here this evening. In addition, with us tonight is Kevin Nowak from Arco Murray, development consultant for Topgolf, as well as the project engineers Peter Vars and Ryan Destro. The rest of our team will be available to answer questions that the board may have relative to the application. I will be doing the bulk of the presentation. I know we have presentation rules to limit the presentations to 15 minutes. We will endeavor to do that and thoroughly cover the issues that we need to discuss tonight. The subject property historically, was part of the Iola campus. The Iola facility was one which was put in place to deal with those individuals who had to be quarantined due to communicable diseases such as tuberculosis. It was deemed necessary for many, many years. It was decommissioned quite a few years ago and was then utilized for county offices in the existing buildings. Subsequently, the county looked to sell the property, and a developer did come forward to acquire most of the property, which comprised the Iola campus, including these 18 acres for ultimate development. The city portion of this, adjacent to our site, has been developed as what's referred to as City Gate. You may be familiar with it. There is a Costco location next door to us and other retail use. But this particular parcel is a freestanding parcel. Actually, it's two parcels, which is long and narrow, and frankly is very well suited to the proposed use of the property for a Topgolf outdoor recreation and golf entertainment facility. Topgolf themselves are the market leaders in this particular endeavor nationwide. They have over 80 locations located throughout the country. This would be the second in New York State. It would be the first one upstate. There's one on the far end of Long Island. The nearest one to us is either in Pittsburgh or Cleveland, depending on whether you're taking the roads or whether the crow flies. But it is quite a bit a ways from this particular site. The Topgolf use is one that speaks a lot to Brighton and speaks a lot to the fact that Brighton has been a leader in our overall area in passive and active recreation in the county. For that reason, this is deemed to be an optimal location for this particular use. The Topgolf use involves a new innovation, if you will, in dealing with golf driving ranges, if you will. There are 80 bays to shoot from within the site, but it's target-based within a field outside. It is also an entertainment venue, providing for a full-service restaurant and food and drink facility, as well as having additional facilities available for gatherings and meetings on the site. This particular use in this particular site is very much in the center part, of course, of our community. And one of the most important aspects, and we'll get into this a little bit later when we talk about community benefits, is that this project is able to be oriented from a vehicular traffic point of view out toward East Henrietta Road and not coming out onto Westfall Road, therefore minimizing or negating any impact on Brighton and the Brighton road system. So our particular challenge with regard to this site is that it retains a historic zoning and had retained a historic zoning of single-family residential. For those of you that are familiar with this site, between the development of the city and the Brighton Meadows Office Park, Sawgrass Drive as we most commonly know it, as an office park, is kind of, makes very little sense as potentially a residential type of community. So to that extent, the town of Brighton's 2000 comprehensive plan identified this area as potentially a commercial site to be developed. And for that reason, we are looking to do a rezoning of the underlying site to get to a commercial designation. And then beyond that, since no one really contemplates in a code the innovations and the types of facilities that we're talking about, there are a number of incentives that we would need to establish this particular use on this site. And for that reason, we are also engaged in an incentive zoning process, which is something the town has championed over the years, and one which is an effective tool for addressing projects which are unique of this nature. So to that extent, we are looking first at the rezoning aspect of this and take a look at the comprehensive plan of the town, both in terms of the rezoning and the incentive zoning. And we clearly meet the comprehensive plan goals in terms of the availability of necessary utilities and infrastructure, the ability of the market to absorb this development, the appetite for the development type, and the impact on the environment, traffic, and municipal budgets and services. So to the extent that we do address the comprehensive plan goals with this particular use, we believe that it is an appropriate candidate for rezoning and the incentive zoning. Now, the incentive zoning process involves a trade-off of what are referred to as incentives or asks, if you will, by the applicant for deviations from the code as offset by amenities, which are offerings by the applicant to the town to compensate, if you will, the town for those incentives which are necessary. The code is very specific on how this is dealt, and this is, while the first public hearing before the town board, not the first step of this process. The town code has a very strict regimen relative to this. This project did get initially vetted by the town board, was deemed to be worthy of further consideration, and referred to the planning board, who then provided their opinion and input relative to the rezoning and the incentive zoning. And the planning board, town planning board, recommended approval of this particular incentive zoning. What I am going to do is to walk through the amenities and the incentives which are being offered for the project itself. There are 5 basic amenities which are being offered by the applicant. The first is an infrastructure amenity. The typical process that we undergo on incentive zonings is that we consult with the town and take a look at projects in the area which may need some subvention in order to make them happen. In particular, an interest that the town has expressed was completing the sidewalk network around Buckland Park. And as a part of another rezoning, there was a commitment on the part of an applicant and Brighton Volunteer Ambulance to construct some sidewalk, but there was still yet some sidewalk to be constructed to complete the link all the way to Buckland Park to provide a continuous sidewalk from the 590 Expressway down South Winton and then up Westfall. That 925-foot gap, if you will, is being addressed by the first amenity, the infrastructure amenity, where the applicant has committed to construct that 925 feet of sidewalk. In addition to that, while there have not been specific additional infrastructure demands or recreation demands, there is offered in those cases a deposit to be made into a trust fund to be used by the town board exclusively for community benefits authorized by the town board, which may be of any sort and variety, provided that it meets comprehensive plan goals, meets infrastructure goals, and the like. The infrastructure amenity itself has a value of approximately $125,000. In addition to that, there is a substantial cash amenity which is being offered in the amount of $275,000, which will help subvent town events and town infrastructure needs. In addition to that, there's a real property tax amenity which is being offered. The project is one which likely qualifies for an incentive through the County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency. As a part of this application, the applicant has committed to keep the town whole regardless of any incentives which are granted. So the full amount of town real property taxes will be paid through an amenity agreement in the event that there is some sort of pilot or payment in lieu of taxes in event. In addition, there is a community benefit amenity in that Topgolf has committed to wholly participate with the town's Parks and Recreation Department and other community agencies to try to provide additional integration, if you will, of the project in the town and also benefit community residents. And the last, and I made reference to this earlier, is a design amenity. And that design amenity is that we have been careful to design this project so that there is no access onto Westfall Road and that all traffic is to be directed through the city portion of the City Gate site to East Henrietta Road. And in particular, there has been a traffic study to establish that that is a safe and appropriate method of dealing with traffic, which is essentially a benefit to the town of Brighton. Typically, you look to diffuse traffic and to do it through multiple sites, multiple roads. In this case, we understand the town's concern and have designed this project around access coming out to East Henrietta Road, and for the most part, then going south into the expressway system. So we have discussed the amenities which are a part of this project. The code does require a discussion of the benefits provided by the amenities, as well as giving a preliminary indication that there's adequate infrastructure to handle the amenities and compliance with the town comprehensive plan. All of those things we have discussed and or have fully documented as part of our written submission as part of this application. In exchange for that generous package of amenities, there are a number of incentives which are requested, primarily, again, because we're dealing with something which is unique. The first deals with the use itself. The use itself is a recreation use. In the proposed BF2 zoning, recreation facilities are permitted, but only are permitted as an indoor venture and not an outdoor venture. So we would be looking for an incentive which would allow that particular use to be conducted. And I'm going to walk through, and our team is going to walk through the plans in a couple of minutes to kind of give a little bit of flavor, but I wanted to get all the legalisms and legal issues out. In addition, a number of the uses which are proposed are conditional uses under the code, and those conditional uses involve a restaurant bar application, outdoor dining and seating, live broadcast music, capacity of the outdoor seating to exceed 50 seats, allowing the outdoor seating area to exceed 750 square feet. Obviously, those are designed more for restaurants, let's say, that are in a shopping center or elsewhere. In addition, we are seeking a building height relief to allow us to have 45 feet instead of 40 feet in height. And since we have a unique use, establish a minimum parking requirement of 325 feet on this site. In particular, we will talk about the fact that we have to enclose the driving area and enclose it essentially with poles and with nets around the outside, which total at its height 156 feet to make sure that we capture everything which is necessary. And finally, there is requests which are made relative to signage, and that signage is depicted on all of our plans and has been vetted initially as part of our application. The one thing that we need to address as part of any incentive zoning application.
And I do want to note, we are past 15 minutes already. I know you're trying to get.
It won't take me long.
Okay.
It won't take me long. One thing that we do.
Just to supplement the supervisor's comment there, he does have the discretion to allow more time. Do you know about how much more time you have in your presentation, Mr. Waldman?
Probably about 5 minutes.
And then your team's going to go after you?
No, I think our team has graciously decided to allow me to be the primary spokesperson, so they will be available to answer questions.
Because I do think we have members of the public who are interested in speaking as well.
Okay, and I will keep my comments to the 5 minutes and leave it at that. The one thing that we also need to deal with as part of an incentive zoning application, or most any land use application of any size, is State Environmental Quality Review Act. And the town board is well situated to be the lead agency for that environmental review, coordinated among all of the agencies that are involved and have approval authority. In fact, the town has taken the first step relative to that and requested lead agency status, and all the other agencies have either consented or consented by failure to object within a 30-day period. So the town is fully invested in their ability to go and to conduct that environmental review. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and walk through the plans and the site plan, and I'm going to take the microphone before I get yelled at by somebody in cable television here. So the site plan that we have is depicted here. Can everyone see this board? If not, what we can do is ask one of our gentlemen if he can stand up and hold it, and I will point to it. Or if no one does that, I'll just move the board around this way. This is Westfall Road in this area. This is the city portion, city and the city gate development, which is down here. Our site, as I depicted, was a long and narrow site over here. I'm sorry, this is Westfall Road.
Thank you.
This is Westfall Road. This is a canal, okay? So we'll reorient ourselves slightly. This is a Westfall Road. This is our site. The canal is to our south. We have our building, which is located in this location. And as you can see, there are targets from which you drive your golf balls into this area. It also should be noted that the edge of the development area is pretty far distant from Westfall Road. The only residential neighbors that we have are in the city on the opposite side of Westfall Road. They have all received notice as best we can. We went to the Board of Elections and sent to everybody who is listed at the Board of Elections on the site. Within this building, what we have are the driving bays, we have the restaurant area, and we have some meeting room area as well. This is the parking area in the rear of the site. Our intention is to have an attractive facade and use. This faces toward the canal area, which is our primary entry off of the parking lot. In addition, this will give you a sense of the driving bays and where the driving bays are. These are the nets. They are not dominant with regard to the site. Lighting is all designed to be contained within the site as depicted on our plans. This is a picture of what the dining area would look like, and this particular view is one which shows our outdoor area. So basically, that is our presentation relative to the site. I think I'm within the 5-minute period which we've been graciously allowed. So we'll stop our presentation now. We'll be available to answer any questions that the board may have. If there are public comments, we'll be taking notes and we'll be able to respond to them at the conclusion of the public input. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. And again, I do want to note, we're going to be taking public comment tonight. We will not be closing the public hearing tonight, and we will not be taking any action on this project tonight. So with that having been said, is there anyone here in the room that would like to address the town board during this public hearing? Yes, sir, come on up. If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
It's Avram Berman, and I have dual citizenship. I'm a resident of Brighton. I live at 55 Chalet Circle, and I also actually happen to own the property at 435 Westfall Road, which is just north of the proposed development for Topgolf.
Thank you.
Good to go. First question, is the letter of intent to the town by Streamliner developer legally binding? Yes or no?
I'm going to suggest that you, I don't know that this is a question and answer.
Okay.
This is an opportunity
Understood.
for you to present. And if there are questions that can be answered, we will. If not, there will be an effort made.
Okay, I just asked a simple question. Is the letter of intent to the town by Streamliner developer legally binding? Okay. If I understand correctly from the letter of intent, even if Comida provides an exemption for real property taxes, Streamline will still pay all school and town taxes based on the actual valuation of the property. Example, $10 million, I think was an estimate given, in perpetuity for the length of the pilot, which I believe is 9 years. Is my understanding of this correct, yes or no? Mr. Goldman? Okay. Incentives. We talk about incentives. To me, it feels like you're trying to influence and buy a vote, but let's call it incentives for sidewalks and cash for the town. Where is the incentive to remill the road for Chalet Circle, which hasn't been replaced in over 30 years? Mind you, we have lots of kids who inevitably will fall on the road, but instead of hitting fresh asphalt, they'll be greeted with loose stone aggregate from this summer's nickel and dime stopgap fix, which will only result in injuries. We've had over 6 water interruptions this year, 5 repairs on Chalet Circle alone. The infrastructure in Brighton is an embarrassment for the taxes that are paid. It is important to note that Topgolf is headquartered in Texas, which means that the profits that are generated in Monroe County will be exported. Those dollars will be exported out of Monroe County. Anytime that you export dollars out of a county and create basically what amounts to a negative trade deficit, that's poor fiscal policy. If we're going to get involved with Comida, let's give it to companies that are headquartered in Rochester, like a Wegmans, or in New York, where we know that the investment is going to occur back into our hometown. Speaking of Texas, who routinely violates human rights of our friends to the south, exporting them to New York City as political pawns, and denies women of their reproductive rights, is inconsistent with the values of Brighton, and as such should not be permitted to financially benefit from our community. Wouldn't you agree, Bill? Last but not least, the failed Citygate project was in part to provide affordable housing, which Brighton has little to none of. I propose that the 18 acres be used for housing development in conjunction with the 40-plus acres which the town acquired on the corner of Winton and Westfall. In total, we have 60-plus acres of land, which could be used to provide affordable housing, stimulate our local economy, lower our individual taxes in a way that doesn't require that we export our dollars out of the state or rely on a corporation who can be here today or gone tomorrow. I also like to note that I would be very interested to see the traffic analysis, that's being talked about. It seems like I have a property right there, so I see the traffic better than probably anybody here because my office is there. So it seems like we're saying, well, you know, Westfall Road's going to be, we're going to mitigate traffic on Westfall Road, but then we're going to, you know, maybe we're just going to shove it all onto East Henrietta Road, and maybe it'll impact Westfall Road, maybe it won't impact Westfall Road. I think there needs to be a lot of further discussion about the impact of traffic, because the impact of traffic right now is pretty challenging in that area. I think that's about it. Any replies to any questions, or is that got to happen offline?
Thank you, Mr. Berman. I don't know whether council wishes to address any of those questions. I don't know if council wishes to address any of Mr. Berman's questions. I do want to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak, but I also want to make sure there are points you want to address that you have.
As the supervisor indicated, the public hearing is going to be held open. I don't necessarily want to start engaging in a back and forth here, so any responses that we have we'll provide prior to the continued hearing.
Okay.
One question before you go that Mr. Goldman.
Yes.
That I did want to follow up on that Mr. Berman alluded to, just for clarification purposes on the payment in lieu of tax amenity. I think I heard Mr. Berman say that it would be a payment of the town tax and the school tax. I don't recall that in your proposal.
I heard that too. I heard that from Mr. Berman. The fact of the matter is our proposal in our letter of intent and throughout has addressed solely the town taxes and not school taxes. This particular project does not have an direct impact on schools. We're not going to be placing any burden on the Rush Henrietta School District in which this property resides. So to that extent, we are addressing the town taxes as part of this, part of our proposed amenity.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here in the room that would like to address the board during this public hearing? I don't see any hands. Is there anyone on the Zoom that would like to address the board during the public hearing? Yes, I do see a hand raised, and I'll ask our whoever is doing that to unmute Ms. Smith. There we go. If you would, Ms. Smith, thank you for raising your hand. If you would please state your name and address, and you can address the public hearing.
Sure, thank you. Good evening. My name is Alicia Smith, and I reside at 520 Deer Haven Drive in Webster, New York, 14580. I'd like to be heard on this because Westfall Brighton SRE LLC does not own these parcels and has no legal basis to make this application this evening. And I wanted that to be on the record.
Thank you for your comment. Is that your full?
Well, you know, for the two parcels that we're speaking of, you know, my siblings and I own 52.5% of these two properties, and we have not been notified of any sale or any pending sales agreements to sell these our properties. We learned of this in the media, and quite frankly, we were shocked. we had no idea that this was even moved, that our land was, a Topgolf was being planned to be built on our land. And, you know, I do have legal counsel who has sent the Brighton town attorney, John Mancuso, he sent, you know, information all backing on this, you know, our ownership of these properties to him. And I just wanted to go on the record that I don't understand how this zoning, you know, is going forward to reclassify the zoning for this property when my siblings and I own this property. I just don't understand it.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board concerning this public hearing?
Also, I just needed to add one more thing. My attorney has filed the les pendens on these properties, and it's currently in court, in the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Is there anyone else on the Zoom link that would like to address the board? Is there anyone else here in the room that has not already spoken that would like to address the board during this public hearing? Mr. Berman, would you like to address the board again? Go right ahead. If you would again, please state your name and address.
Alvin Berman, 435 Westfall Road, Rochester. Again, residence 55 Chalet Circle. I just want to add just to her statement here, which is, wow. I did speak with Betsy, I believe it's pronounced, is it Brugg or Brugg? From Oviatt, Woods Oviatt in Gilman. And, today she actually had communicated to me that the land had not yet been purchased. And so it was just I just wanted to add that because I just had heard what she had said. And yeah, I think that's about it. So it appears until this matter is resolved, perhaps there should be no further activity from the board on this matter. If it's in the Supreme Court and there's a lis pendency, that would indicate that the land in its entirety cannot be sold until that is resolved. Obviously, that'll have to be verified outside of today's debate. But
I'll just note, this is a public hearing, not a debate.
Yes, not a debate. Today's board meeting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berman.
Mr. Berman, if you'd like to stick around, I'm going to provide some information on that very topic right now. Okay. If I may, Supervisor?
Yes.
So we did receive a letter today dated November 21st, 2023. It was actually addressed to John Mancuso. It reads as follows: Dear Mr. Mancuso, as discussed, I am writing to you to advise you that my firm has been retained by Alicia Smith with regard to the application of Westfall Brighton SRE LLC under Section 209 of the Town Code and Section 20 of the Municipal Home Rule Law on November 21st, 2023. Ms. Smith, who holds a significant ownership interest in the entities which own the subject properties at tax account numbers 149.06-1-3.11 and 149.06-1-3.12, objects to the application of Westfall Brighton SRE LLC on the basis that it is not the owner of the respective real property. Very truly yours, Akiva, A-K-I-V-A, Shapiro, Esquire. Mr. Shapiro spoke with Mr. Mancuso and I about a week ago or so and raised this concern, and Mr. Mancuso and I pressed back on Westfall Brighton SRE LLC and its attorneys to provide proof that it had authority to go forward with this application. What has been provided to us is documentation that verifies that a limited liability company called Westfall Development LLC is the current title owner to those parcels that I just referred to from Mr. Shapiro's letter, which are the subject of this application. Westfall Development LLC is controlled by another LLC called Anthony J. Costello Spencer and Sons LLC, which is managed by the controlling managing member Brett Costello. We have received adequate documentation showing that Brett Costello as managing member of Anthony J. Costello Spencer and Sons LLC, has acted on behalf of Westfall Development LLC to authorize Westfall Brighton SRE LLC to make this application, and in fact is under contract with Westfall Brighton SRE LLC to purchase the parcels. And as you may have heard, when Mr. Goldman made his presentation, he represented that he was representing Westfall Brighton SRE LLC as contract vendee, meaning that they are under contract to purchase this property. So from my perspective, I think I can speak for Mr. Mancuso. I know I can speak for Mr. Mancuso on this because we've discussed it at length. We are satisfied that there is, in fact, legal authority to consider this application at this time, and that Westfall Brighton SRE has provided adequate documentation to us on that account, and that is our recommendation that we continue this public hearing. If I could make one more comment about the status of the overall information that has been provided to us. About a week or so ago, our planning department received an 1,100-page environmental document from the developer outlining a lot of information about the property. And that information is currently being reviewed by our staff. We are also waiting on the developer's communications with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and a determination or input at least from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation on what its position is relative to the environmental disclosures that have been made. I think that is an essential part of this board's seeker review process. Obviously, before you can take any action to approve rezoning or incentive zoning, you have to first take a hard look at the environmental factors here and make a determination as to whether there are potentially significant negative impacts. In order to do that, there's a lot of documentation that still needs to be reviewed, and we're in the process of doing that. Staff is in the process of doing that. It is the major reason why we are recommending, staff is recommending, that you continue to hold this public hearing open and take no action this evening.
Ken, if I can just go back, because throughout you've spoken about having authority to make the application, and you referenced a party being a contract vendee, and I just want it to be clear that a party does not have to own a property in order to make an application with respect to that property. That happens frequently as long as you can determine, as you have here, that a party has authority.
Sure, and in fact, that happens routinely before not just this board, but more often it happens routinely before planning board and zoning board, where the owner authorizes another party to make the application either on the owner's behalf or on a contract vendee's behalf, and that is a very routine matter that the planning department works with.
Thank you. Mr. Goldman, I think you.
Yeah, I just
If
wanted.
you would state your name again. For the
I will state my name for the record. My name is Jerry Goldman. I'm the attorney and agent for Westfall Brighton SRE LLC. And I agree with everything that the council has indicated. Specifically, there was a letter of authorization from the property owner through its LLC and managing member. So to that extent, we are fully authorized. We provided substantial documentation at the request of the town council, both Mr. Gordon and Mr. Mancuso. And we're fully satisfied that we have authorization to proceed. With regard to the status of any litigation, my understanding in reviewing records was that while there was a notice of pendency which was filed, it was stricken at the Supreme Court. Whether there's any potential appeal or not, I really couldn't tell you.
And I just want to confirm what Mr. Goldman said. I wrote it down and then I forgot to mention it, and Mr. Mancuso reminded me. Yes, we have confirmed that Judge Doyle, State Supreme Court Judge Dan Doyle, has stricken the notices of pendency or the list pendencies that have been filed on these parcels relative to the objection of Alicia Smith specifically.
And that was done earlier this month, if my...
It was done at least 2 weeks ago. What's the date on that? November 2nd, 2023, those were stricken.
Thank you.
Correct.
Is there anyone else here in the room or online that would like to address the board? I see Ms. Smith's hand still up, but I think her hand has been up. I don't know if Ms. Smith wishes to address the board again. Ms. Smith, do you have anything further to say to the board?
Yes, I do.
If you would, please,
My
again.
hand did go down, and I just put it back up again,
Okay,
so I did.
If you would
lower my
again.
hand.
if
Yeah,
we-
and
Ms.
so I
Smith-
just wanted
Ms.
to
Smith,
let everyone.
Ms. Smith,
I'm sorry.
if you would please again state your name and address for the record.
Alicia Smith, 520 Deerhaven Drive, Webster, New York, 14580.
Thank you.
And so my attorney did refile the less pendants again. He appealed it, so after the, 2 weeks ago. So he did that last week. So there is another filing, just so you know. That's number one. And number two, the Westfall Development LLC are the owners controlled by AJC Spencer and Son. Maybe we should look at who owns pieces of those companies, because I'm an owner. So we can talk about that offline. My attorney can talk to both of you about that, but maybe we should look into and do our due diligence to see who actually owns those companies.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Sure.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board at this time? Hearing and seeing no one, we're not.
Not going to close the public
I was
hearing.
going to say, we're not going to close the public hearing. We will continue it.
So,
date to be determined.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that now. Everett, if you have any input, the developer may have some input. Right now, we have some issues to work out relative to some additional assurance documents that we've asked for, and we have a big environmental review process to go through, and as I said, are awaiting some word from the developer as to what DEC's position is. Everett, any thoughts on how much time we need?
That's correct, Mr. Gordon. It really will depend on when we can get some of these documents that you've mentioned that we've requested. Depending on when we receive them, we'll need a bit of time with the holidays coming up. I'm not sure. But it really is going to depend on when we receive the documents. We'll need about, a few weeks certainly to review everything and to our satisfaction.
Well, I was going to say, you've got an 1,100-page environmental document. We're still awaiting material from the county relating to environmental issues. And you've got some other issues that you are, I know, working on between council. Honestly, it feels to me like continuing, I suppose at some level there's no harm in continuing the public hearing at the next meeting. If some of these issues haven't been resolved, they haven't been resolved. But I realistically, and I'm talking to the applicant now, that's an awful lot to work through and get resolved by the next hearing. And of course, generally we like to, we've heard some comments tonight. We always like to have the opportunity to process and consider comments that we hear. I'm going to suggest that we continue this public hearing at our next town board meeting, which is December
13th, I believe.
13th. With the anticipation that, again, that night we will not be in a position to make any final decision. And I'll ask council, does that make sense? Hang on, Mr. Berman. Sorry, I'll get to you in a minute.
Yeah, I think that would work fine.
Okay. And we are still open, and Mr. Berman, I'll give you one more opportunity to speak tonight.
Alvin Berman, 55 Chalet Circle, 435 Westfall. Two quick things. One, since there is going to be another notice of list pendency filed, would it not be prudent to maybe perhaps provide a few weeks rather than go out and invest resources into reviewing an 1,100-page document paid by the taxpayers? If at the end of this conclusion it turns out that the list pendency does get approved or there's other mitigating circumstances, what's an extra couple of weeks in the grand scheme of things? I think we also need to consider, too, that the late Anthony Costello didn't fulfill his obligation regarding Citygate and is now run by the family, Brett Costello, and some other legal form or entity. But with respect to Citygate itself, let's remind everybody that Comida was canceled their agreement because they didn't fulfill their obligation and taxes were not paid, and it was almost a repossession of the property. So I think based on historical data of the behaviors that occurred in the past that got us to this point today, for the 18 acres to even be available to be developed, would it not be prudent to be a little bit conservative in moving forward on this application until these matters are addressed?
Thank you, Mr. Berman.
Thank you. Good night.
We'll be inquiring into those matters in the interim and can have some answers for the board before it comes up again.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on, we have no communications on the agenda. Thank you to everybody that was here for that matter.
I just wanted to thank
Oh,
the board.
Jerry,
I just
I'm
want to
sorry.
take an opportunity to thank the board again for your courtesy in considering this matter. I noticed that there was a matter which was on your agenda that I think you may be deferring, but I would just like to acknowledge the good work that our town attorney has done over the course of the years, Ken Gordon, and he's kind of smirking at my comment, but nonetheless.
I was smiling. That's how I smile.
You were smiling on the inside? You were smiling on the
Yeah.
inside? Okay. But, you know, it's been a pleasure working with him over the course of the years and look forward to continuing work with Mr. Mancuso and Ms. Barron in their capacities as well.
And
Thank
we
you.
will be acknowledging Mr. Gordon's great work for the town
I'm
before
hanging
we
for that.
adjourn tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
We'll move on then to committee reports. Robin, Community Services Committee. And I don't know if you're giving it.
I'm going to toss
because
it
you weren't.
I'm going to toss it. The Community Services Committee met last Wednesday, November 15th, and in my absence, Councilmember Corrado chaired the meeting, so I will defer to her for the report.
And we do have minutes from that meeting. Park issues, Brighton Town Park Playground replacement has been approved, and town staff will remove existing playground equipment, and installation is slated for 2024. A date to note, the Veterans Luncheon will be held on Wednesday, December 6th at Brighton Town Park Lodge. The public should be aware that water is shut off and park restrooms are shut down for the season. Parks Director notes that fields are still being used during the nice weather, so plan accordingly if you're out in the field and need facilities. The recreation program update. Trunk or Treat was a great success last month. Winter and spring program planning is underway. Winter bingo in your jammies is scheduled for Friday, December 15th. Anything that includes jammies is good in this weather. And we had a discussion of the winter farmers market progress and the planned open house for this Sunday, which you've all heard about. So that was a very good discussion. Related to that, we touched on bike racks at the market. We know that we have intrepid bicyclists in the community, and weather will not hold them back. Bike racks were not originally spec'd for the site, but options have been discussed, and they will be purchased and installed, possibly by Sunday.
There are bike racks on site now, is that correct, Everett?
That is correct. We have some temporary racks in there, looking for maybe a more long-term solution in the future.
Excellent. It's amazing how fast things happen. There was an update on the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Advisory Board. A grant proposal related to solar eclipse planning programming was submitted on November 10th. There was some discussion with strong concerns regarding the application. With the help of a $4,000 grant from ESL, the IDEA Board will be hosting a specialized school supply inventory available for BHS students who are in need of support procuring more expensive school necessities, in particular graphing calculators. The next IDEA Board meeting is Thursday, November 16th. There is no update on community choice and community solar aggregation at this time. The CEC Community Priority Actions and Sustainability Funds update includes the reminder that the Climate Action Plan was to be presented tonight. There was an update. The NYSERDA grants have been accepted in the conversion of the oil heating system to air source heat pump and solar panel installation at the Carmen Clark Lodge. And once implemented, those upgrades will result in a 90 to 95% renewable system. Explanatory signage promoting the sustainability aspects of the Carmen Clark Lodge upgrades will be needed to support additional potential grant funding opportunities under the CEC program. Looking towards identifying locations and installation of EV charging stations in the new year, grant funding is already committed, and the Brighton Town Park has been identified as an EV site. The deadline for submission of the EECBG proposals has been extended to April of 2024, and the Sustainability Oversight Committee is further benchmarking zoning code updates in other communities to determine if budget allocation is accurate. Volunteers Mitch Nellis, George Smith, and Shibangi Gandhi have all made recommendations with regard to making the Monroe Avenue GIGP ecosystem more sustainable in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and cost efficiency. And the Complete Streets Resolution or policy, the committee is still awaiting guidance from Commissioner Garcia and attorney to the town, Ken Gordon, or town attorney, Ken Gordon. It's the hope of the SOC to roll out the adoption of the policy before Ken retires, but...
Don't think that's happening.
And as it would be ideally coincident with the CAP adoption, however, discussion of Complete Streets will be moved to the Public Works Committee for finalization, perhaps with guidance from the attorney to the town. In new business, a draft calendar for the the 2024 Community Services Committee meetings was reviewed. A conflict was noted on June 19th, Juneteenth, and a new date needs to be set. That'll be addressed at the next meeting. Upcoming events, once again, Winter Farmers Market Open House this Sunday from 10 till noon, open to the public. join in the celebration. Please note, there will be no vendors at the event this Sunday. We noted family bingo in your jammies coming up on Friday, December 15th at 6 p.m. It's $10 per family. Pre-registration is required as space is limited, and you can register online at www.townofbrighton.org/REC. Other dates of note: Martin Luther King Day Junior Celebration is coming up on Friday, January 12th at noon. Program to be confirmed. The Arbor Day celebration is slated for Friday, April 26th from 10 till 2, and the site and program will be determined shortly. The Conservation Board is actively planning details on that in collaboration with the Recreation Department. Brighton Clean Sweep is coming up on Saturday, May 11th. And the semi-annual Electronics Recycling and Secure Document Shredding event is slated for Sunday, May 19th. So hold those dates on your calendars. The next meeting of the Community Services Committee is Wednesday, December 20th at 9:30 in the morning, or immediately following Finance and Administrative Services Committee, should that meeting run long. And that's
Thank you.
all.
And speaking of Finance and Administrative Services, Jason.
Yes, the Finance and Administrative Services Committee met last Wednesday, November 15th. Each of the items discussed in committee appear on tonight's agenda. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, December 6th. We meet at 8:30 in the morning here in the auditorium at Town Hall, and the public is invited to attend.
Thanks very much. Public Safety, Chris.
Thanks, Bill. The Public Safety Committee meeting was held on Tuesday, November 14th, last Tuesday, and a number of items were discussed, including reports from the various services. Brighton Volunteer Ambulance reported 535 requests for services during the month, 517 being within the district, and 290 Brighton residents received services. They responded to 16 calls for mutual aid as well. Requests for services up to November 1st is 7,059, and that is only a 0.5% increase over last year. The BVA is participating in a countywide initiative where prospects earn as they learn in a program developed in collaboration with MCC and the Chiefs Association to help alleviate a general staffing shortage for with EMS staff, which continues to be a challenge at BVA as well. And there was also a brief discussion about mutual aid being requested by Brighton and being supplied by Brighton, and how much give and take there is on mutual aid requests amongst the different services in the county. Brighton Fire Department responded, had approximately 2,171 calls to date, and the call volume remains relatively flat. They have 1 career and 3 volunteer firefighters graduating in the next few weeks. They've replaced the roof at house number 1. And Captain Clark wanted to thank all organizations that participated in the homecoming parade and open house, both of which were well done. DPW indicated that they were done with paving for the year, and now they're focused on leaf collection. And they're starting on they're completing the second pass through town, which should be completed by the first week in December. There was a brief discussion on the status of the Chelmsford Lane Bridge, and which will remain closed for an extended period through 2024. Ravi Engineers will provide an update on the status of the design alternatives, cost estimates, and potential funding sources at the Public Works Committee, which was discussed. And I guess I could have just passed on that, couldn't I? Sorry. Brighton Police calls for service through the end of October, 42,517. 98 vehicles participated in the drug take-back event on the October 28th, and 205 pounds of material were collected for destruction. The police department has only 1 vacancy currently, so we're almost up to full staff. Public Safety Committee thanked the chief for reinstating the swearing-in ceremony for the officers that we had at the last town board meeting. Councilmember Wilt inquired about the status of the study on disparities in the department, and the chief indicated his team is waiting for an update from the RIT research team. Henrietta Fire District, which serves West Brighton, reported they had calls as of October 31 of 805 calls in that district. No particular calls of note. The Fire Academy graduation was November 17th, where 21 graduates from 27 agencies graduated, and that facility is in the Henrietta District. We had a discussion of pedestrian and turn signals at various spots along Monroe Avenue, and Commissioner Garcia met with the regional traffic engineer on October 17th to review various matters that were submitted to the New York State Department of Transportation. Generally indicated that they are aware of the various concerns at the various intersections along Monroe and will be evaluating them during the Monroe Avenue Rehabilitation Project, which is to be under construction in 2026-2027. Representatives of the New York State Department of Transportation indicated that although the Monroe Avenue project is primarily a pavement rehabilitation project, they will evaluate safety improvements. Subsequent to the meeting, town staff shared various Monroe Avenue design drawings, the charrette, and existing bicycle and pedestrian plans so that the New York State DOT designers can reference them and incorporate them into their plans. Further discussions on this matter will be held at the Public Works Committee meeting in the future. Crosswalks along Highland Avenue were discussed, and the Commissioner Garcia shared a copy of the Monroe County Department of Transportation's crosswalk policy with the Public Safety Committee, and comments were then submitted. The consensus by our committee is that the Monroe County DOT crosswalk policy does not include some specific enough parameters which should be considered as part of the process, and town staff will consider them when finalizing. Traffic signal at North Landing and Blossom Roads was discussed, and New York State DOT agreed to perform a new study at that intersection and will provide an update. As under new business, the Commissioner Garcia and Deputy Police Chief Dessain responded to requests for speed monitoring on Clover Hills Drive and Clover Street, and they collected speed data from October 23rd through the 26th. The data did not reveal a speeding issue, as the 85th percentile was actually 21 miles per hour, and they reported back to the residents, who were appreciative of the concern and response to the neighborhood inquiry. Country Club of Rochester will have a fireworks display and upcoming, and that would be for New Year's Day, I believe.
Yeah, that's for New Year's Day, and I think we tabled that matter until the December meeting to have further discussion.
So we don't have the current plans, but that'll be discussed at the next meeting. And that next meeting will be December 12th at 0800 hours.
Thank you, Chris. Christine, Public Works?
Yes, you get to hear more from me, and you'll note that there's a lot of intersection.
There is, and we're trying to
with safety, but I'll do my best to edit Commissioner Garcia's very detailed minutes. They're much appreciated, except when I have to read them all aloud at this hour. In any case, Public Works met on the 14th, immediately following Public Safety. We discussed the Chelmsford Lane culvert repair and project. Ravi Engineers made a detailed presentation to the committee and to residents of the affected neighborhood. Their study determined that because of New York State DEC permitting requirements, a larger culvert will be necessary, and pipelining of the existing culvert is not an option. Therefore, they presented three configurations. Alternative 1 includes the reestablishment of a 2-lane roadway with 10-foot travel lanes and 2-foot grass shoulders. Alternative 2 includes the construction of a 1-way roadway either into or out of the neighborhood with a 16-foot travel lane and 2-foot grass shoulders. Alternative 3 proposes to install a paved 13-foot shared use path intended for pedestrians and cyclists only. The pavement profile of the 13-foot shared use path would be designed to accommodate emergency vehicles. However, obstacles such as removable bollards would also be installed to prevent regular access by motor vehicles. Some residents in attendance expressed support for Alternative 2, the 1-way roadway. And if I recall correctly, residents also were interested in the Alternative 3, pedestrian and bicycle only as well. Ravi Engineers estimates the construction costs will be approximately $800,000. A potential funding source for the project is the recently announced Bridge New York 2023 Culvert Program, and Ravi Engineers and town staff will review the application process as soon as documents are available. The Town Hall renovation project discussion continued with a presentation from INEX Architecture. They completed revisions to the report, which compares clean heating and cooling solutions being considered as part of the project. The revised report provides clarity on the cost and payback tables previously presented to the committee and considers various incentives which may help the town mitigate capital costs associated with installation of the systems. INEX also provided the committee with an update on information from tours of facilities that already have similar systems. INEX toured Empire State College facility on Westfall Road, which is partially heated and cooled with carbon-free solutions. They've also been in communication with the Hickey Freeman renovation project team, and on that project, geothermal is not used in common spaces and used only for the individual residential units. The recommendations from the design team are as follows. 1, if the town's priority is to include the most efficient heating and cleaning system that is also carbon-free, then geothermal is the recommended solution. 2, if the goal of the town is to be carbon-free but would like to consider a less costly option, then the VRF air-sourced heat pumps system is the recommended solution. And 3, if selecting a carbon-free solution is not the top priority in the selection of an HVAC solution, then the originally proposed solution of a hybrid HVAC system is recommended. INEX Architecture has indicated that they are waiting for updated construction cost estimates for the geothermal solution from Trophy Point, based on the assumption that geothermal wells in Brighton will be limited to around 180 feet deep. INEX also has indicated that to fully determine the feasibility of a geothermal solution for the project, they are recommending that test wells are made on Town Hall campus, and initial estimates for performing geothermal test wells at the Town Hall campus are $15,000 to $20,000. The town's amenable to this approach, and town staff will work with INEX on developing proposal request documents for the test wells as the next steps in the project. So we are coming closer. We discussed the town speed hump policy. The Department of Public Works has formally published the town's speed hump policy, and this policy is separated into 5 sections which provide a guide for residents seeking to request installation of speed humps in their neighborhoods. Considerations of speed humps on town streets will be evaluated pursuant to Section 200 of the Town Law of the State of New York, and this process is similar to the formation of special districts in town. Comments provided by committee members during the meeting will be incorporated into the final draft of the policy. Rectangular rapid flashing beacons that we have requested from the county. We've received the evaluation, and I can provide a slightly more detailed report. Thank you for starting the discussion in public safety. There were 6 locations identified, and Monroe County DOT indicates that a portion of them meet Category A criteria, which means they are eligible for installation and maintenance at the cost of the town, and another portion are fall into Category B, which means they are eligible for installation and maintenance at the cost of the County Department of Transportation. So Westfall Road at Brickyard Trail has an existing marked crosswalk and meets the criteria for Category B. MCDOT will install an RRFB at that location in the spring of 2024. Crittenden Road at Lehigh Valley Trail and Westfall Road at Evans Lane, where Atonement Lutheran Church is adjacent, and Edgewood Avenue at Willow Crest Drive all have existing marked crosswalks and meet the criteria in Category A. MCDOT has indicated that it would be up to the town to install RRFBs at those locations if desired. And the Public Works Committee would like to request supporting documentation for Westfall at Evans Lane, as it is located along Westfall Road near the same corridor as the Westfall Road at Brickyard Trail. And their proximity would suggest that their traffic volume should put them in the same Category B, which would be installation at the county DOT's cost. So town staff is following up on that. East River Road at Lehigh Valley Trail does not have an existing marked crosswalk, which is the first requirement of the county RRFB policy, and so that location does not meet the minimum criteria since it is an active trail crossing. So for MCDOT to install a marked crosswalk at this location, they have indicated that the town or the University of Rochester would first need to construct ADA-compliant curb ramps on both sides of East River Road at the trail crossing. And should a marked crosswalk be installed, the location would meet the criteria for Category A based on the AADT, that is the average
Annual daily traffic. Annual daily traffic.
Average annual daily traffic.
Yeah.
AADT, average annual daily traffic, less than 10,000 vehicles per day. And last, the Penfield Road at Forest Hills Road, adjacent to Corbett's Glen Nature Park location, also does not have an existing marked crosswalk. MCDOT has indicated that this location meets the minimum criteria for a marked crosswalk if the town were to construct a sidewalk connection with ADA-compliant curb ramps from the south side of Penfield Road down to the Corbett's Glen Nature Park parking lot. Without a sidewalk connection on the south side, a marked crosswalk is not justified. Should the town proceed with constructing one, the MCDOT could install the marked crosswalk, and the location would then meet the criteria in Category B, meeting the criteria for installation by the county. Other project updates from the county, the Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road and Winton Road preventive maintenance project. We received a detailed update. Previously, town staff reached out to MCDOT staff to request consideration of complete streets improvements as part of this project, including road diets, sidewalks, and bike lanes. At that time, MCDOT informed the town that given the timeline and funding that was secured for the project well in advance of construction in 2024, there is little flexibility. However, recently the town received a letter from the county indicating that they have delayed the bidding process for this project in order to allow for a more in-depth analysis of potential road diet on Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road. MCDOT broke the analysis into 5 sections. They conclude that because they are unable to provide a continuous bicycle network along the entire length of Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road in all 5 sections, they do not recommend implementing a road diet and bike lane as part of the project. In addition, they did request feedback on their analysis from both the town of Brighton and the town of Henrietta, due to them by Friday the 17th. Town staff worked on developing comments in response to the request, and I believe that has been submitted.
We had a conference call with them in lieu of
sending the comments. And I look forward to an update on that call. Because that corridor
a lot of progress
needs,
on that call.
Good, very good. That corridor deserves some progress. And The Elmwood Avenue Road Diet, the project has been completed, and MCDOT is requesting an ordinance from the town to establish the various traffic control devices associated with the project, namely no parking and no stopping signs along the corridor. In New York State project updates, the I-590 bridges, there's no new news on those. The Monroe Avenue corridor improvements, at the commissioners meeting with New York State DOT on October 17th, he was able to provide representatives of the DOT with additional information. Do you want to comment on that rather than having me read that all out?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, as Councilmember Warner indicated, the New York State DOT representatives are aware of our concerns, and they will be looking at safety matters as they proceed with design of the corridor. We've provided them with copies of the design documents that have been performed, the charrettes, and bike walk plans, and so they've graciously accepted them, and we'll be looking at them as part of their design.
Excellent, thank you very much. The last of the state projects that we're keeping an eye on is the West Henrietta Road corridor improvements, and there is no new news at this time on that either. New business, town project updates. The Multiversity Trail concept is getting underway. The trail connects the University of Rochester, RIT, and MCC by linking to the Erie Canalway Trail, the Lehigh Valley Trail, and the Genesee Riverway Trail by multi-use walking and biking connections. And the town has contracted with Bergman Associates to lead the development of the plan, and a project kickoff meeting was held on Thursday, November 16th. So it's coming to fruition. The East Avenue Sidewalk project in the section between Allen's Creek and Knollwood Drive, the town has proposed an alternative solution that meets the New York State DOT requirements and appears to be amenable to all parties involved. The new alternative requires a slight shift in the roadway alignment and therefore requires additional survey work. The town's consultant, Lou Engineers, is currently working on revising the design to incorporate the new survey limits and to identify any issues that may come up during construction. And the current schedule then puts the project at 90% design by March of 2024, and the goal is to construct the sidewalk after school lets out next summer. Another sidewalk project on East Avenue between Clover Street and Pelham. The town is awaiting issuance of a construction permit from New York State DOT for the project, and at this time it appears that the construction will not occur until spring of 2024. The town staff have engaged with Monroe County, who have indicated that they will extend the town's CDBG funding until next year if necessary as a result. And it is possible, because of the time frame, that the project will have to be rebid in the spring of 2024 with updated pricing. Now in new business, there were 2 sewer district petitions presented, one for 57 Eldridge Avenue. Town staff received the petition from the owners of that property to extend the Brighton Consolidated Sewer District. The extension will involve the construction of infrastructure for a single-family home that is self-funded and will not require capital charges to be levied onto the district. And the second was for 2222 West Henrietta Road to extend the Brighton Consolidated Sewer District. And that extension will also involve the construction of infrastructure for a single-family home that is self-funded and will also not require capital charges to be levied on the district. In both cases, the town will work with the owners and their design teams to guide them in completing the district formation process. And last, trees. The committee received recommendations for removal and replacement for the following trees. 36 Hollywood Avenue, 32-inch silver maple, remove and replace. 130 Clovercrest Drive, 22-inch Norway maple, remove and replace at an alternative site. 101 Esplanade Drive, an 18-inch Norway maple, remove and replace. 86 Monroe Parkway, 20-inch Norway maple, remove and replace. 260 Fair Oaks Avenue, a 50-inch silver maple, remove and replace at an alternative site. 630 Claiborne Road, a 27-inch sugar maple, remove and replace. 420 Pelham Road, a 14-inch Norway maple, remove and replace. And those are all the trees, and that is all of the report for the Public Works Committee, and I'm sure everyone is delighted that it is done.
Thank you, Christine.
Next, almost done. We meet next on December 12th at 9 a.m. or following public safety if it goes long.
Thank you. New business. Jason, reading and approval of claims.
Yes, earlier this evening, I reviewed claims totaling $600,815.25. Notable claims include the Baker and Taylor Incorporated, in amount of $20,619.97, representing payment for books for the Brighton Memorial Library. Also to the Monroe County Library System, in the amount of $26,953.54, representing payment for July through December 2023 cost shares. Also to Pro Construction, Inc., in the amount of $70,022.60, representing payment for the 2023 sidewalk repair program. And finally, to Terry Tree Service, in the amount of $20,972.30, representing payment for tree removal services and a bucket truck rental with an operator. The claims all appear to be in order, and I move that they be approved.
Second?
Any discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Why don't you do the next one too, Jason?
Sure. The next matter seeks to approve a budget amendment transferring $3,450 from the Office of the Town Clerk's Delivery Charges account to the Office Furniture account for the purchase of standing desks and file cabinets. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second?
Any discussion on this? Dan, anything you want to?
Just, reallocating funds that didn't end up getting used this year. Some of the cabinets go with the desks we'd already purchased earlier in the year. Unfortunately, the desks or the cabinets that we do have don't fit underneath. Perhaps if they was Bill's standing desk where the seated height was higher, these cabinets would still work. But for those of us at lower altitudes, they don't fit underneath the desks. So we'll repurpose those when we've offloaded other ones in the past. They're very quickly snatched up by other departments, and I'm sure they'll be, with the exception of one that was recently damaged, the others will get reutilized within the town, I'm sure.
Thanks. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio. Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye, and this is another finance one. Jason, why don't you do this?
The next matter seeks to authorize the supervisor to enter into an agreement with Burke Group for actuarial services for fiscal years ending 2024 through 2027 for base fees of $4,000 for full valuations and $2,250 for interim valuations. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second?
These relate, and these are ongoing relationships relating to what are called other post-employment benefits, i.e. retirement health benefits for retirees that are entitled to health care benefits. But this is required by GASB accounting standards to have these actuarial studies done. We have a motion and a second. Anything further? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Next one with a variety of parks-related budget transfers. Robin.
Certainly. The next matter seeks to approve budget amendments transferring $2,500 from the Park Department's Buckland Park Utilities account to the Buckland Park Facility Improvements account, $1,800 from the Buckland Park Utilities account to the Buckland Park Maintenance Equipment account, $3,000 from the Corbett's Glen Maintenance Supplies account to the Buckland Farmhouse Maintenance Repair/Service account, and $2,500 from the Frankel Park Maintenance Supplies account to the Buckland Farmhouse Maintenance repair/service account for completion of new window installation at the Buckland Park Lodge, the purchase of a new flail motor attachment for the Buckland Park tractor, and the replacement of an air compressor on the fire system at the Buckland Farmhouse. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
And just to be clear, you read it, what was there, that is a mower attachment. rather than
Okay,
a
thank you. Motor attachment.
Any discussion on any of those? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Christine?
Yes, the next matter seeks to set a 202-B public hearing for proposed expenditures of the Consolidated Sewer District for the lease of a sewer pump station utility truck with crane, purchase of a pole camera, mobile columns, a GPS unit, a trench box, the design of the Corbett's Glen aerial sewer, and a Ford F-350 truck. That public hearing to be set for, and forgive me, I'm looking for the right date,
The resolution actually sets it for
Tonight.
December 27th at 7 PM, and
there we go.
she's making the motion, so we'll talk about it in a moment.
Yep.
Well, yeah, so on a public hearing on December 27th, 2023 at 7 PM. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
And I think what you're going to discuss is whether we're going to have our meeting. We have often, during the last meeting of the year, held it at noon rather than in the evening.
Right, and whether you're holding it at all, I don't know, and maybe Earl does, or maybe you do, Bill, whether there's other matters that are already set for that December 27th meeting.
Nothing that I'm aware of at this point.
Well, the approval of the disbursements is always an important thing at the end of the year.
Right, but I'm not saying not have the meeting, but whether there's already been a public hearing notice sent out
No,
for
No, we
anything
can change the
for 7 PM.
nothing for
Right.
that.
Needed to.
So I just put that out there for consideration. I will also note for the clerk, this resolution and the notice of public hearing were drafted by bond counsel. There is a discrepancy in the times. The resolution says 7 PM. The public notice says 7:05 PM. They should be consistent. So whatever the board decides, they should be consistent.
Yep. I don't know whether any of the board has a preference for that week. I think we probably will hold a meeting. Sometimes we've even canceled it and pushed stuff out to the organizational meeting, but I think we're going to hold a meeting that week. Does anybody have a strong preference that they would prefer to hold the meeting during the day rather than that evening?
I will not be present, so.
That's right, so.
Either is fine for me.
Either is fine. Noon is always good during that holiday week.
Noon is good during that holiday week.
I will just note, if you are going to move, not only do you want to change this resolution, but you also need to send an announcement to local media
Yep.
to make sure that that's done timely as well.
Yep. And since the agenda for that meeting does tend to be fairly short, although I will note that I can't, I'm guessing I can't rule out that one of the public hearings tonight may be continuing through to then. I don't know.
You might have Topgolf back then, right?
But I don't know that that drives us one way or another. Let's hold that meeting at noon on the 27th, and we'll take the necessary action to change it. I think I hear everybody nodding that that's a better time.
So the resolution as drafted would be modified to replace the time of 7 PM with the time of
Noon.
12 PM.
And the notice of the public hearing would indicate that the hearing starts at noon.
Right, and is that acceptable to you, Ms. Corrado?
Yes.
And you, Mr. Warner, who seconded the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion on that matter? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Jason?
Yes, the next matter seeks to approve closing out the library roof project and transferring the remaining funds totaling $46.47 to the debt service fund. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second?
Any discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Chris?
Next item is to approve budget adjustments per the approved 2024 capital improvement plan for purchases to be made in 2023, using additional interest income from 2023 in an amount totaling $164,990. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
This reflects the fact that interest income is up substantially in 2023. These are items that were identified for purchase in the 2024 capital improvement plan, but because of the strong interest income results, that's the good news of interest rates having gone up in the last year, we're going to apply that money to purchase those items early in 2023. Any further discussion on that matter? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. And Jason, the last matter.
Yes, the next matter seeks to approve the dissolution of the other post-employment benefits reserve and transfer funds in an amount totaling $517,046.22 to unreserved fund balance. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second?
This dates back to many years ago now at this point, when there were some Government Accounting Standards Bureau changes that required recognition of the liability of other post-employment benefits. Again, as I mentioned earlier, those are retiree health benefits in our case. At the time, there was discussion that municipalities would be allowed to establish reserves and pre-fund those, and the town made some efforts to put money aside. However, GASB never recognized formal reserves for these monies. So since our financial statements reflect, they don't reflect that they're set aside in any special reserve, I think this budget transfer really reflects simply the way that those funds are currently treated today anyway. Of course, health insurance benefits for retirees, like other benefits, are really paid on a pay-as-you-go basis, and we've been controlling those as we have controlled health insurance benefits for current employees by a number of means. So we're not spending this money, we're simply noting that it will remain in fund balance on an unreserved basis. How'd I do, Earl?
Very good.
We have a motion and a second on that. Any discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. I don't want to do this part of the meeting, but I'm going to. Ken, would you join me at the podium, please? We figured it would be presumptuous to celebrate your retirement before the meeting ended, as an earlier draft of this agenda noted, because who knows what might happen during this meeting. You might have a change of heart or something, I don't know.
I might have just walked out.
You might have done that. This is the last town board meeting that Town Attorney Ken Gordon will be attending, at least in that capacity. we thought it was true a number of years ago when Ken served on the town board and didn't run for re-election, and we said farewell to him, but I brought him back, and I'm glad I did. I appointed Ken then as attorney to the town nearly 12 years ago when I left that position myself to serve as town supervisor. Like Ken, I wore both of those hats. We're not going to get into discussing which hat we like better, elected official or attorney, but as of Friday, Ken will no longer be wearing either one of those hats formally. Retiring as a town attorney on Friday. Ken has played a significant role in every single significant decision this board has made during the last 12 years. And I can tell you, your input, your work for the town has been second to none. I'm not happy that this day has come, but we all certainly understand. We're grateful for your work, your legal advice, but also other advice that you've given. Most of the time, I listen to your advice, and you never steered me wrong, and I am grateful for that. We did hold a somewhat informal, it was a nice luncheon here in this room on Friday. Yeah, we're still gonna maybe have another little informal celebration before the end of the day Friday comes and goes. This is just a very small memento to thank you for your service. I know I'm speaking for everyone, and I imagine that you'll hear from my colleagues in a moment just how grateful and how appreciative we are of your work. We hate to see you go. We know, please don't be a stranger, and we are a better town. Let me just say that, a much better town for the service of Ken Gordon, both as our town attorney, but also as a town board member. Ken, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
You can open it now if you'd like.
I'd like to display it, so it's a crystal with the Brighton logo on it. It looks like a diamond, but I'm guessing it's not. Earl would have problems with that. So would my successor, Mr. Mancuso. Thank you very much. This is very nice. I will cherish it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The microphone is yours,
Is it?
too. Yes, it is.
I might have a few remarks then. Oh, yes, look, there. First of all, thank you so much for the privilege of serving as attorney to the town and as town attorney for the last approximately 12 years. I wanted to start out, it seems like I've been doing this at public speeches that I've given this year. I want to explain my attire. If you look closely at what I'm wearing, you may see that I chose a black and white Looney Tunes tie to wear to my last town board meeting as town attorney. And although some of you may infer that I wore this as a commentary on the experiences I have had as town attorney, you would be wrong. In fact, I am wearing this tie as an homage to my dear friend and my original mentor in Brighton politics, who ran my successful campaign for town board way back in 1997, Steve Aronson. Now, most of you never got to know Steve at all, as he passed away suddenly and far too young. But Steve was my guide into local politics and local government, and my sage as well. Thinking that I took all matters far too seriously, Steve went out and bought me this Looney Tunes tie as a gift and told me to wear it whenever I needed to lighten up. And tonight seemed an appropriate time to wear it to honor Steve's memory and to keep my mood a little light as I leave service for the town that I love very much. It has been a pleasure serving with the department heads that help run the town of Brighton. To my colleagues here tonight, Chief David Cathaldi, Finance Director Earl Johnson, Commissioner Everett Garcia, you are all the consummate professionals. Your commitment to excellence in all that you do for the town makes the town of Brighton such a great place to live, work, and raise a family. You are all superstars, and the residents of this town do not know half of all you do and do not know how lucky they are to have you serving this great town. John Mancuso, Lauren Barron, who are here, and the other members of your firm, John, I know you will also serve this town excellently, and I think the town is in tremendous hands with John taking the reins as attorney to the town, and with Lauren working with planning, zoning, and historic preservation, and the other members of John's firm working alongside the two of them. To Town Clerk Dan Amon. Dan, you have been a kindred spirit of mine in many ways, mostly in your wry assessment of how strange some government processes work or don't work, as the case may be, and for your love of English Premier League football, despite your misguided support for those powder blue Mancunians that you love so much. Dan, truly, your commitment to serving the community and to just being as helpful as possible to all members of the public, friend or stranger, it doesn't matter to you, is unsurpassed. My longtime colleague and soon departing town board member, Jason DePonzio. Your calm and inquisitive manner has meant so much and has had such a centering effect on all things considered by the town board. The town board will miss you, as will the residents of the town of Brighton, in your service to this community. I hope you find new ways to put your sharp mind and compassionate manner to work for this town. I know your shoes will be difficult to fill. Nate Salzman, if you're out there listening, I assume you are, will be stepping into those shoes and will take office on January 1st as the newest member of the town board. And it is one of my regrets leaving that I will not get to work with Nate on the town board. I knew Nate's father, graduating with him from Brighton High School in 1979, and I suspect that Nate picked up his father Mike's kindness and keenness, and that he will make an excellent addition to the Brighton Town Board. My friend and fellow colleague from bankruptcy court, Chris Werner. You have always aligned yourself with what you thought best for your neighbors and other Brighton residents. You have shown leadership in both public safety and in beautifying the community, and you have diligently pursued and inquired about matters that are raised to you by the many members of the town that call on you and your welcoming ear to their concerns. Christine Corrado has been the champion of so many causes, including advocating for those with hearing impairments and mobility issues. You have also helped lead the way in transitioning Brighton streets to more complete streets to accommodate not just cars, but pedestrians and bicyclists also. Robin Wilt. Talk about a champion. Truly, your passion for so many things in this community shines brightly in all you bring to town board. Your leadership in diversity and equity issues and your outreach and advocacy on behalf of the underrepresented portions of our town is so vital to the health of our community. but you have also championed environmental initiatives and other fresh and exciting ideas. It is my hope that each of you continue in your roles and continue as you have to make Brighton such a wonderful town. Bill Maley. My supervisor, my boss, my friend. It is hard to explain to the community just how much you give of yourself to this town each and every day. You eat, breathe, and sleep thinking about the workings and working for all the residents of the town of Brighton. Each of the initiatives that I've mentioned previously, you have not only embraced, but led to successful fruition. I cannot imagine a more dynamic, committed, caring, and passionate leader of a town than you. It has been my greatest honor to serve under your administration. I want to thank you all and all of the town staff for your willingness to trust my advice, and I wish nothing but the best for Brighton and for all of you. Thank you very much.
Bill, if I might say, I've been a lawyer for 48 years. And so I think I know what it means to be a lawyer. But my experience with Ken is as a client on this board. And it is a totally different perspective. And as a client, I've found Ken's work to be comprehensive and extremely impressive. When we need guidance, he gives us that kind of guidance and helps us move in the right direction. And I've appreciated that and just been so impressed. Thank you, Ken.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Ken, I know we're all going to take a chance here to recognize your service to this community and the extreme diligence with which you execute your duties to this town. Your passion for this town is clear, and we admire and respect everything that you have done, even when it's not easy to go in the directions that you're counseling. We have always found that your counsel has been sound and your eye certain on what is best for this community. And I can't thank you deeply enough for everything that you have brought to this role, both as attorney to the town and then town attorney. I didn't say it often enough, how much I deeply appreciate all of the advice that you have given me over the years.
Add my 2 cents.
Sure, why not? Pile on.
Well, you know, you take.
You may need to move the mic a little bit
Oh,
closer.
yes, to be.
Oh, I can hear you. Oh, they don't know.
The whole world needs to know, Ken. I have to say, in the time that I have sat in the seat to your right, I have so greatly relied on you, sitting to my left, the first few days, first few town board meetings when I did not have a command of proceedings or just I didn't have that whole ball of wax in my hands, and you did. You very kindly and generously supported me wearing both your town attorney hat and your past board member hat. And I would not have, I wouldn't have endured if it hadn't been for the good launch you gave me. Your intellect and your integrity are unparalleled. The generosity of your heart is astounding. And in the few years that we've sat side by side here, you're like an onion. Keep peeling back layers, and there's more, and there's more, and there's more. And it saddens me greatly that I won't be learning more and more about you sitting side by side like this, but I know you're not going to leave Brighton. You can't stay away from Brighton. Brighton is you, and you are Brighton. So I look forward to many more years of connection beyond this setting. Thank you for all you've done for us.
And Ken, thank you. And to echo Christine, the experience that you brought as a former town board member sitting on this side of the table, so to speak, as well as your experience as town attorney to guide us and counsel us through the various decisions that we've had to make has been invaluable. I've always been impressed by your ability to take complicated matters, and during an executive session when it might be 10:30 at night, when you're explaining things to us and laying out our roadmap of decisions that we need to make and considerations that we need to think about, your ability to present those in very clear and concise terms, taking complex legal matters and explaining them to laymen. And even though I'm an attorney by trade, in this role I'm a layman, and I'm relying on your guidance and your wisdom in helping through the decision-making process. So that I'll always remember, and that I'll always admire that you brought to the table. It's not goodbye, it's so long, it's see you around. So I know that you won't be absent from this community, but I do wish you the best in your endeavors, and enjoy what's out there.
Thank you, Jason.
Well, I'm not going to miss your friendship because you're not going anywhere.
You and I will definitely stay in touch.
I am tremendously going to miss being able to pop into your office and talk.
Is that too?
Your advice on so many matters, your counsel, not in the attorney sense, but just in the human sense and experience, taught me so much in these years, and I can't begin to thank you for what you've done for me, and just helped me just gain perspective on things. You've talked me off countless ledges. How many times you said, yeah, you probably don't want to do that, has been uttered an awful lot. So thanks, my friend. And it's not me if I'm just sappy. So I will also say kudos to you for stepping aside while you're still on top, unlike Arsene Wenger.
Oh, wow. Couldn't help it. You had to take the shot.
Thank you for
See who wins the league.
thank you for finally injecting some levity into really an extraordinary farewell to a friend, a colleague, one in a million. You call him as you see him. You never stopped. You never will. Thank you.
It's been my honor and my privilege. It really has. Thank you.
And
Thank
the
you
pleasure
all.
is mutual. I think we've covered matters of the town attorney, town board, and maybe even the town clerk. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I didn't even let you call the roll on that one, Dan.